Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can you hear us in the back? Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bell?
Here.
Councilmember Cousins?
Here.
Councilmember Fisher?
Yes.
Councilmember Knight? Here. Councilmember Michelle?
Present.
Councilmember Smith? Here. Student Rep Covert? And Student Rep Malik will be absent this evening. Mayor Keough.
Here. Thank you. We have one set of meeting minutes to approve this evening. That is from our regular city council meeting of May 28th, 2019.
I'll move to approve those minutes.
I second.
Moved by Smith, second by Knight. Thank you both. Mr. Smith, any comments on the minutes?
No, I didn't have any changes.
Ms. Knight?
I didn't see anything.
Other members of council? Okay. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed, I should ask. No opposition. Motion carries. We have no prearranged participation this evening, so we're down to approval of the agenda. There is an updated description of...
I'm sorry, I put the wrong, L. It's really just L2. I forgot that you put the logo.
Yeah, for item L2. Updated note and memorandum from the city manager related to our actions, or potential actions, I should say, related to the easement agreement and memorandum of understanding with the schools. So if everybody could find a few minutes to read that during the meeting, appreciate it when we get to the item. I'm sure everybody has read it before we go forward.
So, excuse me, this is different than what you sent Friday?
It's redlined from that.
I thought the other was too. The markups were hidden, but they were there. I mean, so.
Right, and then this is those changes accepted, and then the school recommend back. Yeah.
Also, this is response from them.
Yeah, that we met with them today.
You got that today?
Yes, we just met with them today.
I'll move the agenda.
Moved by Smith. Support. Second by Bell. Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, we are down to item F, F1. We have F1, F2, and F3. We have 3 public hearings this evening. Our first public hearing is related to the 2019-2020 millage rate and budget. We will, by resolution after this public hearing, take action to set the 2019-2020 millage rate. So I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:03. Thank you, Carol. Are there any members of the audience who would like to speak related to the proposed millage rate and budget and/or budget? Just so the audience is aware, we are proposing. Oh, is there a hand up? Oh, come on up, Mr. Murphy.
Can I go up there?
Yes, please. We want to see your smiling face.
Okay, thank you. Same person, Robert Merson, 3713 Bristol Drive, Dexter. Okay, Mr. Mayor, is there going to be an increase in the millage?
There is a 1 mil increase proposed for the street fund, yes.
Think we're going to do any more street work?
We are going to do more street work, and we have a plan to do even more than that. But yes, we are going to do more street work.
Okay. That's the only question I had, I guess.
We're not quite to Bristol, but we're getting close.
Getting close.
We are. It's on the, what page is it on, Courtney? Help me here, on the street fund.
It's on 18. April
Program for-
2022.
1 minute.
So Bristol is programmed tentatively for April of 2022.
2022?
Yep.
It's 3 years, 86, 87, 89, that'd be a good year.
Right.
Of 89. Listen, thanks. If you don't have any more, I'll interrupt you.
Okay.
Please do. Thank you for coming. You are a consistent regular at the first meeting in June. We appreciate it.
Have something to do.
So as I was saying, the millage rate that's proposed tonight is 15.3062 mils. That's up 1 mil in total from 14.3062 from last fiscal year. The street millage has been proposed to go from 3.4075 to 4.4075. General fund millage of 10.8987 is remaining the same, or as proposed to remain the same. Are there any other public comments on the millage or the proposed draft 2019-20 budget? So seeing none, I'll close the public hearing at 7:06.
6.
Thank you. And if there's a member of council that would,
Then we just talked about the street millage there. I see it there on the bottom of page 9. It says as projected to return to the 18-19 level in fiscal year 2021. I think we should plan to continue that in there because we already know that the cost of doing the streets, we're seeing the bids come back higher all the time. So, I think, we should go ahead and keep that because otherwise we're going to find ourselves getting behind on keeping up with the streets.
well, can certainly be evaluated each year. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we set it for only 1 year period. That's how it works, so. I appreciate your comments on that. Is there can somebody get a motion on the table so we can have additional discussion if needed? There is a proposed resolution on page 13 of the packet, I believe it is.
I'll move the resolution on page 13, carrying 14.
Motion by Michelle.
Support.
Second by Bell. Thank you both. Okay, further discussion. Courtney, do you want to lead us?
Yeah, there weren't too many changes relative to the millage rate, and that is the thing that we have to set tonight because Marie's got to get the tax bills to the printer here in the next week or so. As far as changes to the budget, do you want me to talk about those now too, or?
Sure, yeah.
Probably the most significant changes since we started at the beginning of May is we got our local community stabilization payment, which is an action item for later in the agenda, which we have basically a program to help with the unknown project costs for the trail and the pedestrian safety project. And then we are getting additional money from the DDA. They're going to make their final payment for the health purchases and reimbursing us for the $78,000 payment we made for DTE. So that was an additional revenue in general fund. That's one-time revenue. So that's additional funds again that could go up the path if we turned out, depending on how those bids come back. I'm trying to think of what else has changed significantly since we made a few adjustments. We added some funds for that library connection sidewalk that we had talked about because we didn't get that done this year. Spread out the website payment because that isn't done. The industrial park signage still needs to be done, so we put that in next year. So not too much change in streets except for increasing the Central Street project costs and the pedestrian enhancement project costs. So they stayed the same, equipment, water, sewer, that basically stayed the same. And then the DDA's draft budget is in here as well, and we'll have to take action on that on the 22nd.
24th.
I think, is this the 24th? I keep.
It's okay.
It's the July, that's the 22nd. So yeah, I guess unless there's any other questions, the millage rate resolution is the same one we've done in the past.
Just changing the,
Yes.
With the, right. with
And the years,
one.
yeah, years and months.
They just leave
Okay.
here.
Paul?
You mentioned the DDAs paying that, there are two dues there. And you also mentioned it could be used, it can be used for other things though, too, correct? Doesn't have to go to the, doesn't have to go to the trail.
No, it's not restricted.
Okay.
It's just in there.
Right.
Yeah, all unrestricted funds coming back from DDA.
Yeah. And we use the same amount for our recovery of, the state gave us back for the, as we have in the past, last couple of years.
Yeah.
Same amount, we didn't change it.
So when
The
I,
budgeted amount?
How much, I guess what my question is, what's the difference between last year and this year in that amount?
what was the final total? I think it might be a little bit less.
That's for the recovery of.
Activity was, last year was 311, no, I guess it was more. This year is 367. So it was a little bit more. But we budgeted at the level that we're required to get because eventually that's gonna go down. So this, they're gonna start basing more of it on population and different things, so it's going to go down, but, that's why it's budgeted at 150,000. But last year we got 311, this year we got 367, just in general fund, plus what we got in the streets.
So the discussion about going down, do we know that for sure, or was that just a
Yeah.
conjecture? that-
They changed the formula, so they started taking the, if you have a fire department that has area in the community that's, state facilities, they get some sort of stipend. And so now that's gonna come from this fund. So they're slowly like finding things to take out of it besides giving it to local communities directly. So, and then once it shifts, there was a gradual shift to a part of it being population-based, which is usually not good for us because we have a smaller population, so. It'll start chipping down, but we're happy for it while we have it.
Yeah, okay, so,
It still could be more than what we budgeted, though. We
Right.
just don't know.
Yeah,
They just don't know
It's just
until
such
we
a-
see the thing.
I don't wanna
the formula
rely on
applied,
it.
I think,
I got it,
Yeah.
I understand.
It's hard to rely on it.
Well, we wanted that at one time, we may not get in.
Right.
Because they just
Right, that was the
generally
fear.
don't do that, okay? They say they'll do it, but they didn't,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
We knew they'd figure out eventually that it was too much and would start.
Right. And I don't know if it is too much or not, you know, if they were honest about it, they would have said that they were gonna replace what that was in the taxes and for personal property, and we know what that was, okay?
And that's kind of like the baseline amount of the 150. And then this other stuff is, I think it's like 150% of what we're supposed to get or something like that. It comes out to me.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions on the budget? Julie?
I'll make my same speech I make every year. I wish our resolution for the millage rate was in two separate resolutions, the tax administration fee separate from the millage rate, because I am opposed to the tax admin fee of 1%, but I guess I'll have to vote in favor of it because I'm in favor of the millage rate, which is the greater amount. I think our taxpayers pay enough. I guess that's where I'm going with that.
Isn't the 1% for collection of the school tax and the
But
county?
it offsets like the assessor, the board of review, those sorts of costs.
Yeah, our residents don't pay that.
No. No, it's just 1% on everybody's bill.
On everybody?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
It's been that way since
Okay.
we became a city. It was on Scio's bill.
Okay,
We didn't collect it before because we didn't collect taxes for other jurisdictions.
okay. Fine, Steve. Other comments on the budget? Okay, please call the vote.
Presidents?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Smith?
Yeah.
Fisher? Yes. Keel?
Yes. Motion carries. We have set the millage rate. Thank you. Public hearing number 2 this evening is on our 2019-20 water and sewer rate ordinance. After which, council will consider the adoption of the 2019 water and sewer rate ordinance. So I'll open the public hearing at
7:15.
7:15. Are there any members of the audience that would like to speak on the water and sewer rates?
How much is it gonna be, Mr. Mayor?
We are we are proposing a 3% increase on the water rates and a 7% increase on the sewer rates. I think that is similar to what we did last year, right? It's the same percentages.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The resolution is shown on page 49 of the packet, or the ordinance, I should say, not resolution, the ordinance. Okay.
47. That's the ad.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go on.
I'm looking at the rates.
Yeah. We just included the ad that we.
So seeing how there's no comments from the public, I'll close the public hearing 1 minute later and call it 7:16.
Yep.
And the council would,
Make a motion to adopt the 2019-2020 water and sewer rate ordinance.
motion by Smith, second by Fisher. Thank you both. Any discussion at this time? Mr. Michels.
This is perhaps a nitpicky, nerdy question. Do we need to have a section that says the adoption of this repeals the previous one? Or is that baked into the structure of the overall code of ordinances?
This one's more of a, like a procedural one, so it doesn't get codified with the rest of the ordinances, but we could add a section 4 that says that. We
Okay.
just haven't added it in the past. It's only
Well,
been,
it supersedes the other because it says they're effective July 1.
and
It does it anyway.
we only started doing this like 3 years ago after cityhood, before we just did it by resolution. So. But we can add that. It's not a big deal.
Other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Jones, please call the roll call vote to approve the adoption of the 2019-2020 water and sewer rate ordinance.
Bell.
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Michelle's.
Yes.
Knight.
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Motion carries. Public hearing number 3 is for amendments to our fireworks ordinance. I just catch up on the page here.
51. Page 51.
So I will open the public hearing to hear comments from the public related to the proposed changes to our fireworks ordinance.
718.
At 7, open at 7:18, thank you. Most of these changes are dates and times on when the fireworks are allowed. So the state law changed at the end of 2018, and we're mirroring that. So essentially between 11 a.m. On December 31st to 1 a.m. on January 1st, between 11 a.m. and 11:45 p.m. on the Saturday and Sunday immediately preceding Memorial Day, between 11 a.m. and 11:45 on June 29, 30, July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, between 11 a.m. and 11:45 p.m. on July 5th, if that date is a Friday or a Saturday, and between 11 a.m. and 11:45 p.m. on the Saturday and Sunday immediately preceding Labor Day. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing 1 minute later at 7:19.
Yep.
Is there a council member that would like to,
I'll make that motion.
moved by Cousins?
I'll second that, and I'd like to include that we just referred to the state law in the ordinance.
Yeah, we wanted to ask about that because I don't know if they're going to change it again. And so if we just say during days and times explicitly identified by state and federal law, then we don't have to change it if the law changes. And we can still advertise, obviously, the dates that it's effective, but we just thought that maybe, not having to change it every time state law changes. Because obviously we want to ban it, except for when we're not allowed to ban it.
Mr. Cousins, you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Friendly amendment, okay. So we have a motion to adopt the ordinance recommendations with the reference to state law.
Doing it now, we'll be able to publish it so it will take effect before 4th of July, which is our number one. of these other dates, you don't really get fireworks, but 4th of July is like the
Most common.
contended.
I didn't hear anything about what it is.
Yeah.
We heard some a week or so before,
Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
Your neighbor?
Firehouse Fridays was
Oh, yeah.
was a
Someone
was
thought
a
it would be a
hit.
good idea to launch fireworks at Firehouse Fridays in the middle of the morning.
Okay, other further comments? Mr. Bell?
I'm just curious, is the fine increase part of the state
State
law?
law,
Okay, any other hands in there? Seeing no further comments, Ms. Jones, if you would call the roll call vote, please.
Smith.
Yes.
Bell.
Yes.
Cousins.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Knight.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. We're down to item G, which is non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on any item? If so, please state your name and address for the record.
Bob Wood from Alpha Metal Finishing, 8155 Green Street. My handout,
Please, welcome. Thank you for coming this evening. Good, good.
I didn't see one for myself. All right, so I think what happened back in 1995, the planning commission for zoning rezoned our building from light industrial to village residential. And so what I'm hoping we could do is get that reversed back. And I put my points on here. We bought the building in '86. It's a 20,000 square feet industrial building. The map on the back tells you where it's at. It's the blue part that I highlighted in blue. Megan, in your introduction to the Planning Commission, noted that the policy objective, one of the policy objectives was to allow existing structures to be utilized to their highest potential. And I believe that for our building and industrial use is probably the best potential. As it stands, it's sort of with proper utilities. So I was hoping we could return it to original zoning. I understand we can continue doing business as we have because we're there, it's grandfather clause, but it does impact the saleability of the property, and it also impacts the value. We have to go to the bank and borrow money, and the value of the building impacts the bank's response to our application. So the property is located, it's west. Property to the west, the wastewater treatment plant, Stacy's, and our parking lot are all signed I-1. So zoning our building I-1 to be consistent with neighboring uses that would make it part of a contiguous light industrial use. Paragraph 3. We're not. It could be commercial, but we're really not in a high traffic area because it's a dead end street. Nobody goes down there unless they really have business there. So there wouldn't be any drive-by. So I'm not sure that commercial would be a good place to put it. And as far as being used as residential, we'd have to raise the building, and even then, I don't think it would be a good place because it has streets on two sides, has railroad tracks on the back, and then commercial building on the east. So I don't think anybody really want to locate there. I certainly wouldn't. So those are my considerations. I would hope you give that some consideration and recommend that we put back to I-1.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming and sharing that. Are there other members of the audience who would like to speak this evening? welcome again.
Once again, do I need to repeat my name?
You can do
Just-
it for
just so
fun
I
if
can
you
hear
want.
the beautiful-
No, we're good, Bob.
Pardon?
Just so I can hear the beautiful sounds.
My name's Robert Murphy,
Thanks, Robert.
and I live at 4713 Bristol Drive, Dexter Crossing. In all due respect to Councilperson Michaels, would you consider elaborating on what you learned at this fire station design for the audience? I have this personal interest.
How much time have we got?
Well, that's up to you, and it's up to me. No, I'm really serious. And I thought if someone was here from the Sun Times, perhaps they could, and I know you're very good orators, so. Would you do that? Is that okay?
I'm happy if he wants to answer your question a little bit, but there is a multi-page document that he typed out
Yeah.
at the last, and handed out, I think prior to the last meeting, which I don't have a copy of, but
I got it right
I
here.
knew I should have come. Well, could I have a copy of that?
Yep.
That saved me talking.
Yep, if you got email, write it down and I'll send it to you.
I don't have it.
He can pick it up at the office.
Oh, you don't?
I have trouble getting here.
He can get him a copy.
I'll even, I won't give it to anybody else.
No, it's public.
It's not secret, but no,
public
we'll
info.
get you a copy, Mr. Murphy.
The quick version I learned is that generally, new fire stations are designed to be 50 to 75 years lifespan. So the idea is you want to future-proof it so you don't prevent yourself from doing something you might want to do in the future. And that firefighter safety is very important because they're spending 24 hours in the building, and so how you separate things from one another has become very important. Another thing that has become very important is designing the station to help manage PTSD for firefighters and first responders, because you think they're running into a building, they're cutting people out of cars. And so making sure that there's adequate light and connection with nature, and that the lights even change color based on the time of day so that you're not getting bright blue light in the middle of the night is something that is they're paying much more attention to. I'll get you the list and I'll bend your ear more.
So if you build one, you want one a set two-story with sleeping quarters above?
Not necessarily. And actually, there's a big debate between if you have two-story, do you have a fire pole? Kind of the old school folks always wanted the fire pole. Slides were a thing for a while, an actual slide in the fire station, and stairs, with people advocating for all the different ones of which is best. And what they do when coming in and determining the layout of the station is we've got data for every single run we've done, what type of run, when that run was. And so if your department has most of its runs at night, the design of the station will try to put those bunk quarters closer to the apparatus bay, because that's, statistically you're going to be responding from there more often. If you're a type of fire station or fire department where most of your responses are in the middle of the day, you're going to put those day spaces closer to there. I have that data, but I can't tell you which we do now, so there's all sorts of subtle variations in how these get designed.
You mean they're gonna move around where they sleep? Is that what you mean? Night and day?
No, so for example, if we were a suburb like the one where the conference was held, it had a population of 10,000 in the day, but 200,000 people, or 10,000 people at night, but 200,000 people in the day. So almost all of their runs are going to be in the day, because that's when the people are there in the offices and the businesses and doing that type of stuff. So their station would be designed so that the day spaces, the day room, the kitchen, the training rooms are closer to the apparatus bay than if you were a station where your daytime population was 10,000, but your nighttime population is 100,000, because there are going to be more people doing more things at night. Does that make sense? Okay, I can say concerning...
Not for me it doesn't, but I never considered that a problem.
I'll find you out in Bristol and we can chat a
Thank
bit more.
you.
thanks, Zach. Thanks, Mr. Murphy. Are there other members of the audience who'd like to speak this evening under non-arranged? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to communications. Page 53 of the packet, our upcoming meeting list and our signed calendar. Are there any comments from council or staff on the meeting dates? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into our first report this evening from our Public Services Superintendent. Welcome, Dan.
Good evening, council.
Good evening, Dan.
Good evening.
In your packet, you have my two-week report. I'd like to start with a couple updates first. This Thursday, we're going to clean the iron out of the clear well down at our filter plant, aeration plant. We checked the iron from the raw water, comes from L'Enfontaine, Ryan Drive, down to the filter plant down by the DPW. Every couple of years, we get a little bit of iron in there, so we're going to go in there with a Vector truck and hose it and Vector that all out. We were planning on the 25th, but they had an opening this Thursday. So with the nice wet weather that we have, it'd be a great time to go ahead and get that over. Any questions on that? Last Thursday, I met with Tony Grant over at NEPCO, the brewery and industrial park. The reason Tony asked for the meeting is because of the sampling and the testing he's got to do with the brewery waste and how expensive it is, and he wanted to talk to us to see if there was some cost savings. Over the past 2 or 3 years, I've been working with him, and one of the biggest price tags for that sampling and that testing is the sampler itself. He's got to hire a different company that comes in with a sampler, sets it in the manhole. That costs him about $1,200 a week for 3 samples. We have him sample every week 3 samples. So the first thing I talked about with him was maybe it's time to buy a sampler. One of the things we went over was maybe him borrowing. We have 2 samplers down at the plant. We have a brand new one, and then we have a backup. Went over that with him. If we did do something like that, and we did let him borrow that, I would expect him to buy a sampler. I do have another meeting with him this Wednesday. I also went over different aspects of what they're doing with their pre-treatment. They've been doing a really good job the last year. They've met all their numbers with BOD. They're a little over on phosphorus, but not bad. Suspended solids, so they really got a good handle on their pre-treatment system over there. So this Wednesday, when we go back over there, we're going to talk a little bit more about going in the sampler. And then we're also going to go over some of his lab procedures, because some of the lab procedures could be done in-house, and we've been talking to him for a couple of years about that. But I think the biggest savings for him right now would be if he was able to buy a sampler. That would be significant. It'd be $700 to $800 a week he'd save.
And how much does a sampler cost, Dan?
Somewhere between $500 and $7,500, depending on what he's got. The brand new one we just bought was about $7,000. But for him, it's significant, savings. Another thing that we're going to talk about Wednesday, with our wastewater treatment plant, we put a sheet together called an MOR. We go through every aspect of what we're doing every day. And then we have to give that to the state once a month. So not only do we got to give them our test results to show them that we're doing what we need to be doing to meet the requirements, but we also give them our dailies. So one of the things I was going to work with Tony on Wednesday along with our staff is maybe them producing that kind of, it'd be a lot smaller than what we have at the Dexter wastewater treatment plant, but at least giving us an indication every month of all the tests that they're doing on that pre-treatment system. And maybe in the near future, I come back and say, maybe we need to cut the sampling a little bit too, because they are doing a really good job. But the only thing with cutting the sampling is that's the only way that I know what they're doing every day. And they're doing what they should be doing and paying for the seats on the bus. So next meeting, I can come back after I meet with them one more time and tell you where we're at. Any questions?
So how much did you say that would save him a week to do that?
$1,700.
$700-800. I mean, a week, yeah. The sampler is the big cost because they bring 1 or 2 people with the sampler. They set it up, and then Wednesday,
when we can get more into this, that's what I'd like to do, is bring our backup sampler maybe and show him how to use it, let him use it for a while until he gets used to it. Because after we got through this initial meeting, he's like, well, that's a huge savings. I should probably just buy a sampler. So,
And the difference is $13,400 if it's $700 a week.
right, that's significant.
Well, yeah. You can buy one for $7,500.
Right.
In my Indiana math, I can figure out that's a few
I-
dollars savings.
I've been trying to work with them, but, I mean, as they've been going through the this pre-treatment for NEPCO, I mean, they were obviously real good at making beer, but this pre-treatment and the BOD and the phosphorus and everything, it was a lot for them to undertake. So hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll try to do what we can do to help. If that's all right.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me.
Okay. Do you have any questions on my day-to-day report with water, wastewater, DPW?
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Under DPW, just curious, what are the pink tires?
I know.
On Dover Street, we had a couple that were in the road right away that need to be removed. We
Okay.
asked the property owner to move them, they wouldn't move them, so we sent the DPW out because they were on our city property.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan, what are the new PFAS monitoring requirements that we have to do? Do you have any insight on how frequent we have to do those, or what we have to do special?
Well, I don't have the exact on that, I can put that in my next report, but we gotta do it, I think it's once or twice a year, on the wastewater end. And one of the main reasons for that is we have PFAS in the system from a couple different locations. It's not above where the state wants it, one of them is, so we're working with that particular, business on that, and they're gonna have to sample more frequently too.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to sample, I believe, 2 times a year. We just sent a letter out, or we're gonna send a letter out, I can't remember, that we're gonna ask them to sample 4 times a year, that we could get it figured out where it's coming from that business.
Gotcha.
But I can put that in the next.
That would be great if you could. I'd like to be educated on what we're doing differently though. So.
Okay. Because it is gonna be additional cost. And that could change too, which it has. And what they're requiring on water and wastewater.
Zach?
It's not in this report, but I was wondering, would it be possible for us to talk with Washtenaw County Road Commission and get permission to run the street sweeper through the roundabouts? Those are kind of getting nasty along the curbs with little gravel and bits, and it's kind of sad that our welcome to town is dirty roads, even though it's not ours.
I'm not sure if they finished their punch list, but we can check with the road commission, because I wouldn't necessarily want to do something if it's still something that they're supposed to clean, but we can ask them
I
about
wonder.
it. Other than that, they're not going to care if we do that every once in a while,
Yeah.
but.
Actually, I can talk to Kurt. I know Kurt was working with somebody there for snow plowing
Yeah.
too, so maybe we can go ahead, like with snow plowing, we're there first, we kind of hit it all, you know, and then if they're there first, they kind of go through it, so maybe we can do the same with the street sweeping.
Other questions on Dan's report? Thank you, sir. Appreciate all the good work with your team. Next up is our Community Development Manager. Hi, Michelle, how are you?
I'm fine. How's council this evening?
Good.
Oh, that was really good. Andrew, I didn't hear you. Okay, equal opportunity and talker here. All right, you've got my report in front of you. Before I go into the verbal updates, do you have any questions on what's in the report?
I don't have a question about the report. What would be the process of working with Mr. Wood to answer his concerns?
So Mr. Wood did address the planning commission because what has to happen is they would have to change the designation on future land use map in the master plan in order to change the zoning. So as near as I can tell, the zoning changed back in '95 when there was a complete overhaul, change in the master plan, then the zoning ordinance, and that's when everything changed. Excuse me, in that area. The planning commission did hear Mr. Woods. He was very respectful in his presentation to the planning commission. Mr. Smith will remember, but the planning commission was not they did not wish to change the designation. They felt that keeping the village residential would promote more of a possibility of redevelopment of that piece. They looked
For
at-
residential?
It can be mixed, because if you look at next door, which is MedHub,
Yeah.
they felt that the village residential designation was a more, would facilitate that redevelopment better than a general industrial designation.
So they're hoping for more of the MedHub philosophy there on that street?
For that, on that side of the street, yes. That it fits with the residential that's on the north side above the river.
And in 95, MedHub wasn't even there.
Correct.
It was a commercial operation,
Right, but it,
designed industrial, correct?
I'm sorry,
Was it designated designated industrial there?
no, that was master planned and rezoned at the same time as Alpha Medical was.
So it was changed at that time.
Yes, sir. So to continue to answer your question on process, that's what the planning commission would have to do. And what I explained to Mr. Wood is, in talking with city council, obviously you can't change the zoning designation, but if the council, as a majority, felt strongly that it should be changed, you're going to consider the recommendation of the planning commission to review and distribute the master plan. If you felt that that needed to be changed, then you would, instead of distributing, you would send the plan back to the planning commission with your suggestion. And then they would either do it or send it back to you saying, this, we feel strongly this way. So that's just the process.
What if we don't send it back to the planning commission and still go through with the public hearing? Or go through with the distribution of it? And wait the 63 days and address all the comments once we have all of them?
You can do that at that time too. That's the other alternative.
So it can be changed?
It's,
Without going to
yeah,
the planning
we're not
commission.
done, because planning commission still has to hold that public hearing, address all the comments that may come through local public comment, as well as the public comment period from surrounding communities, utilities, railroads, and regional agencies, SEMCOG, Washington County.
I mean, my opinion is that the surrounding communities are not likely going to focus in on this blue square when they provide comments back to us. It's more of an internal, citywide, what do we think it should either remain or stay as? And I don't know that slowing down the 63-day process to send it back to planning commission to have that deliberation. We can, if we want to ask them to provide better thought on it, we can send that message back without slowing down the process, is my point.
I agree. Some things make sense and some don't, okay? I mean, I understand the process you have to go through, okay?
I mean, didn't we just change the one across the street from
Right.
Yes.
something to something soon?
So the one across the
The one on the
street
corner.
was also rezoned during that same period, but that one was a mistake because its zoning, its future land use designation didn't change. It was village residential. But somehow it was an oversight. It became I-1. industrial.
That's it. So, Mr. Wood, we won't be taking any action tonight other than potentially, I'm thinking, sending this on for comment at the other, you realize that?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Paul, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle, for this clarification.
Okay, so for for the verbal updates, the 3045 Broad Street Committee met with Norfolk last week, and they explained that they were facing some challenges with the numbers. So you'll remember that there was an update that I provided you a month and a half ago that explained that they were looking at numbers, 3 different scenarios. The scenario of all ownership with retail, office, commercial, a combination of maybe a boutique hotel with commercial retail and ownership, or maybe you had luxury rental, possible increase in density with luxury rental. But what they have determined is, let me put it this way, the commitment to the project, that they feel so committed to this project, that instead of trying to continue to try and come up with these numbers that are completely out of their wheelhouse, what they asked was, would the 3045 Broad Street Committee, with the city, as its partner, give some extra time so they can find a partner who has that strength in those areas of the retail, the commercial, the potential boutique hotel, et cetera, that they can bring that entity in to this process and work through it, because they don't want to start from scratch. And they really do like what they have come up with in concept with this community. Everybody likes it. So the committee had some questions, but overall they felt that the commitment of Norfolk. The 3045 Broad Street Committee is still committed to having the partnership. Excuse me. And we have a meeting set up for July 11th to see where their progress is in finding. They have a couple that they're talking to, but they want to find the right partner, just like we went through the process to find the right partner. We've gotten to this point where we've got this great concept. That was the right partner. We now need to take another step. So July 11th, we'll have another meeting, and at that point, we're hopeful that we'll be meeting their partner, or at least having some idea of, what their additional time frame may be. Does anybody have any questions? Sean, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so please keep in mind that, we started a public process for allowing the public to comment on what might evolve on that property, right? And I think the last public meeting we had was July of 2018. I don't know the exact date, but it was in that time frame. At that time, nobody was talking about a boutique hotel or whatever, okay? What came out of that is, if you remember, about 90 days after that meeting with the public, they did their first in-depth cost review of what it was going to take to put the project together, and found that the building 1 and 2, which kind of go together, they're where the DTE substation is on that side of Broad, closer to the park, that the cost of those 2 buildings was more than what they were able to generate in revenue for the types of uses that they had proposed, i.e. the condominiums approach. So they're looking for different uses that might generate more revenue and require less cost, i.e. maybe less underground parking or less environmental impact type thing, because that side of the project has those costs on it. The third building, on the east side of Broad, is viable, as it's proposed as an office building. Most remember it as an office building. So what the committee also did was asked, and this kind of dovetails into the facilities topics that we've talked about for last year. The committee did ask Norfolk and Quinn Evans to provide a cost estimate for city offices on the first floor of that building for discussion. So we expect to get more detail from them on that. We gave them the Partners in Architecture programming, the same space needs, if you will, that David had used in other areas. And what else did you give them, Courtney?
The sheriff's not on that.
And the sheriff use, right? Because the thought is the sheriff and city hall can go together in that space.
Right.
So what if they come to, I don't know that, unless council tells otherwise, the 3045 Broad Committee, I think felt like, they're a good partner team. We're way outside of the pre-development agreement that we had with them in terms of timeline. So procedurally, I think you may see an amendment to that, just to get back under some type of agreement to work with them. But they admitted to needing 2 to 4 months to get more information to come back specifically for building 1 or 2 in terms of uses. But when they come back with that, that just means that they're more financially comfortable that they can do it.
Right.
We still have to take those ideas back to the public and explain that why the change, because it'll have been 15 months since we were in front of the public. So
Right.
in the meantime, DTE continues to decommission,
Right.
which is a good thing. So.
Yes, it is a good thing. And one of the reasons, just to piggyback on what Sean said, there was a significant amount of discussion at the 3045 Broad Street Committee about the importance of activating the space over there. We've had, and you all know, in the master plan and in the DDA's development plan, the expansion of downtown, higher density residential, commercial, office, retail. In theory, you plan it, you implement it through your zoning, but you also have to be cognizant that the market requires certain things that you can't necessarily get planning and zoning. It takes that forethought on the part of councils and PDAs to understand that spaces need to be activated. And you've heard me talk before about how the city offices are an anchor tenant in your downtown. One of the reasons why you wouldn't want to take your offices out of downtown is you don't take an anchor tenant out. That affects other businesses. But it can be a significant activator if city offices are moved to the 3045 Broad Street area, i.e. the third building especially. You activate that space, you've now you've created a movement of people by moving your offices. It's one thing that the developer and the 3045 Broad Street Committee thought was worth at least investigating.
Well, the other topic on that is that one of those buildings has to be built first. It's unlikely that they were going to build the whole thing all at once.
Right.
So the discussion we had with them is if building 3 is viable and it's something the community likes and thinks is a good fit there,
Right.
Can it go first? The last topic that was briefly discussed at the meeting is that Norfolk was having conversations with the neighboring property owners about potentially acquiring additional property, but those talks have stalled. They were not able to reach concurrence on anything. So, Paul, pencil up.
Well, I give a hand, but too many weed pulling this weekend, so, I guess a couple of comments about it. The fact of the matter is that the reason that we have even started this discussion about that piece of property is that we took out a factory that we wanted to, and that's been gone. It was the first company that moved out of that area. Subsequently, certain other things moved in, but that was the first factory that moved out, okay?
Yep.
When you're talking about the property that you're talking about redeveloping now for the first one,
For the
on
first.
the east side there of Broad Street, yeah, we're not talking about that property at all. We're talking about property that we purchased. That may be used for, contiguous to that someday, but it wasn't for the main reason that we took over that site to get it out anyway, okay? So we've, I wouldn't say we've changed horses in the middle of the ball game, but we've at least shifted the philosophy about what we're doing, okay? Second thing is that if we do take over that first building for part of our usage, I want to remind us that it's also tax exempt. And so there's no value for tax value into that for us to do that because it's basically a wash. And it's going to cost us some.
The building, if we only take the first floor, the rest of the floors.
Yeah, I get that, but not the first floor. You're losing half the value of the taxable dollars on it right there when you do that. And the third thing is that, you know, I've dabbled in the philosophy of a boutique hotel before, talking to people. And two of the people that I have some respect for is Dennis Dahlman, who has one in Ann Arbor and had a larger one, and Michael Weber from Weber's. And I've had discussion with both of them, and they would not, neither one would even think that that was a viable option for the city and the size that they would have to make it viable, And so I would think that there'd be going to have to be an awful lot of discussion on that, and some facts about how it's going to happen, okay?
Right.
There was deliberation on the committee, or not deliberation, I mean, there were people on the committee that questioned whether or not that's a viable use also.
I would hope so.
And we're not saying
And
that it's,
We're not-
you and Donna that's on that committee, is that correct?
yes.
The three of you?
Yeah.
From council.
Council, correct.
Yeah, and we're not, I hope nobody's misconstruing, nobody from the committee is saying that that's a good use or a bad use. I'm trying to make sure that that's the idea that they floated, 6 or 8 months ago, and it's now come, we haven't met with them since, I think, September, or,
The public gets you right, they haven't met with them for a long time.
So since it's come up again, we questioned it, and I just want to make everybody aware, that's what they're looking for another use, whether it ends up being that or not. They're trying to figure out what it can be that makes it viable.
And to be clear, when we're talking about this possible boutique hotel, it's not the entire site.
Oh, I get that.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
And we have the same, the
That would be one
3045.
good size hotel.
Yeah, the 3045 Brixton said, 3045 Broad Street Committee had the same concerns. We haven't seen numbers. And maybe one of the reasons that Norfolk has trouble with the numbers for that particular use is it isn't viable. But they're not sure that the way they're going about it is actually the right way to do it because it's not in their wheelhouse, so.
And I understand that there's a business in the community that would love to have that in the area here for their business, okay? And that's admirable that we can share that philosophy, okay? But I would caution us that a lot of times the business they have there are not just the type of weddings that they think they're going to be able to fill a hotel with on a weekend.
I completely understand what you're saying. They would have to be, if that was something going farther, I would expect that they would have to be have significant financial input into all this. I mean, you're not going to build a hotel for a business just because they think they can do it.
I was just trying to update you on what we talked about.
I appreciate it.
I'm not judging that the use, I don't know what it's
I
going to
think
be.
it's, I'm still very happy that we
Might end
have
up as
a
trailhead
group.
parking.
That's what?
Might end up as trailhead parking for all I know. It's as
Or
valid.
expand on the park, I got it, okay. But the point is, I think, I'm happy that we're moving forward on it, that we have a partner that we are at least willing to have discussions with, but we haven't had that. We know that it's a significant improvement from the last guy that was here.
Right.
I can say that.
We feel comfortable with the project. The
Yeah, well,
development team.
I think
they're just, they seem very real, so that's a good thing.
And I've said this before, you heard me say it before, I will be the last guy to say that it's a crazy idea. Because I had a lot of people tell me the same thing back in 1982, okay?
Well, I think they're really committed to the site layout that was created in the group. I mean, everybody wants to keep that, but So some of the uses on the inside of that layout might have to be different to make it viable, but I think they're very committed to the look of and how they can make that work, because they had the buy-in on that, you know.
And I think, once again, how I've come up, is the area will be, we need to have a significant input onto what that looks like from the park as well.
Right.
Nobody
Right.
was there.
So if there are any other questions, if there aren't any other questions, I'll go on to the next one. The Victoria Condo Homeowners Association has submitted a request to amend the PUD for Victoria condos, and it's a minor, you may laugh. The plan calls for a small decorative white fence along the edge of the stormwater basin. And it's not a requirement for the safety. I've gone through the planning commission minutes and reviews. There is a decorative one that sits behind the initial buildings, but the homeowners association doesn't want to continue that, and there is no real need for it. It has no safety or overall aesthetic. I really can't find why it was ever required, but it's there. And their homeowners association has requested that they not have to continue to put it around the basin for where the newer ranch style condos are. So,
How deep is that basin?
I'd have to go back and ask Patrick, but it's the basic size, didn't require a fence. It's 3% slope, I want to say.
What's that?
3% slope. If it's 6%, you have to have that safety.
And how deep is it, you know?
I don't know that.
Deeper this year than last.
Yes,
you're right.
that is true. So I can tell you that a little decorative fence isn't going to prevent somebody from going into it. So at this particular point, it's a minor amendment which provides the zoning administrator with the ability to rule. And at this point, since there isn't a safety factor and the homeowners association has voted to not have to do it, I'm leaning in that direction. And I just wanted you to know.
What's the timeline on when you have to get back to them on that?
Within the next week. It's been on my desk for a few weeks, so. Okay.
I might want to know a little more than I wanted today.
I mean, most of our basins don't have fences, right? I mean, the
Right.
ones in Westridge don't have fences, and the
Right.
ones in
Just one. Just one.
Yes, the
Say it again.
park.
Just one.
Right, the
Industrial
industrial park, right.
The industrial park's the only one.
Yeah,
Has a fence?
has a fence.
The own or even private.
The schools. The one on Dan Point has a fence. Those are the only two.
Keep kids in it.
Yep. Yep. Okay, third thing. LaFontaine had an inquiry last week. They wanted to know about a temporary special event permit, or if one could be issued for a sale that they want to do. It would involve having a couple of 10-by-10 tents up from basically July 1st through October. It's a sales period, some type of sale
That's
that
a
they want to
sale.
do. I'm sorry?
That's a sale.
Yes. We talked about, where would you have the location for these tents? Is this a national campaign kind of thing? So and he's not their general manager, I think he's their head of sales, is trying to figure out how best to package this together with a little site plan. He made a copy of it, the property, so he can kind of figure out what it is that he really needs and for how long, and we'll see. I don't know if it'll come back with an actual application, but that's something that they're looking at.
I take it this is probably not on their property.
Oh, yes, it would be on their property.
It would be on the
In their
property.
parking lot,
Okay.
yes.
Maybe they're looking at using the parking lot again.
No, that ship has sailed.
Okay.
And am I make an assumption that if I go to the Chevrolet dealership in Chelsea, or the one in Ann Arbor, or the one in Brighton, or the one in Tecumseh, all those will have tents on there?
I'm not making that assumption. That's why he's got to come
Then
up
I
with
would
some more
think that that would
information.
be a question I would like to ask. Is
Oh,
it
absolutely.
Is it national, or is it only that they want to do it here?
Right.
All right.
It may more likely be all the LaFontaine
Well,
dealers.
maybe, I don't know. That's-
If I
They've got
had to
one on
make a
Jackson Avenue,
guess.
I don't know what these ordinances are for Scioto Township for that, but they've got one in Saline. They've got one in Brighton now, and they're gonna have one in, I don't know what the town is, east of Lansing there. Just build a new lot there, build a new thing there, so.
Based on the questions.
Williamston, that's the town.
Yeah. Based on the questions that were asked and the lack of definitive information regarding how long it would be needed, et cetera, I don't think it's a national. I think it's something that they want to do to drum up business for themselves. I could be wrong. We'll know if he submits something, but I wanted to give you a heads up that that may be coming through. And there'll be lots of questions. In the packet, it also identifies that there's not been an update on Avalon Housing. There wasn't when the report went out. DTE is re-reviewing the request about the shared driveway. I'm not holding a whole lot of hope that they're going to be able to make a decision. They're really reluctant to, because they haven't planned out what the site is going to look like. And so it makes it really uncomfortable for them to be encumbered by a shared driveway.
You're talking about DTE has to stop.
I'm sorry?
DTE is the one that hasn't made the definitive
Correct.
plans, not Avalon.
Not Avalon. So we think we've come up with actually I have to give Courtney credit for this. Reduce the shared driveway so that you still, to one lane, a one lane in, center the approach so you still have the connection with the driveway across the street, but you'd have one way in and then one way out on the far east side. We think that that can work. You may have to push the dumpster down farther toward the rear property line so that you get, some clear access for the pantry with the deliveries and all. But we think it could work. Plus, the fact that you've got, remember, there was unidentified some, just possible spaces for the garden, parking for the garden. You can take that down farther along the western portion of that property that will eventually be DTE's, because as we know, they've said you could continue to do the garden until it's indefinite at this particular point. So we think that it could work. Avalon's looking at it. So it's an alternative. Avalon really does not want to go to Planning Commission with the shared driveway without having DTE's blessing. By doing this minor little one way in, one way out change to the site plan, it still could meet all of the feedback that they got from the site plan review committee, but give them what they need to be able to come to the planning commission. So, okay? And that's it, unless you want me to talk about something else.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the city manager report, please.
Also, the first thing I wanted to ask about was an idea we had about the pedestrian safety and kind of selecting a hybrid solution between the rapid flashing beacons and the hawk signals. I spoke with OHM and they were supportive of using the rapid flashing beacon on Ann Arbor Street and on Baker, but using an adult crossing guard at the peak times to help with the larger groups of kids. So the benefits to that are it's not $100,000 to install the hawk signal at each location. And it will give us a chance to kind of evaluate it for a year. without putting in an extreme amount of infrastructure that I'm just really worried is not going to be something people like. So I don't know how council would want to kind of decide if they're comfortable with that, or the problem is I can't just really have OHM, because OHM, it's going to cost them quite a bit to design the Hawk installation. That's not just putting up a rapid flashing beacon, there's a design to it. So I wasn't sure because that would be something council would be comfortable with trying as opposed to the Hawk, or how we would just make that decision, but I just wanted to throw it out there as a possible sort of compromise between.
That's a cheaper option, right?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, it's less expensive, it would definitely give us the opportunity to do something at all of the crosswalks this year. The city would take the responsibility for the crossing guards, because the schools hate doing it. And I'm hoping that, because we talk so much about pedestrian safety, we should be able to generate interest in some people willing to do it.
How much does that cost per year, per section?
So right now, because we pay the 40% markup for retirement costs, because it's a school employee doing it, it's about, I think it was $5,000 to $7,000. So it would be, it's like 180 days times 2 hours times whatever we pay them. So 12 bucks an hour, whatever it is the cost. So it's like $3,600 a spot. So it's quite an extensive payback period if you look at, the $100,000, or let's say the incremental cost is $70,000 between the rapid flashing beacon and the Hawk. And like I said, I mean, the crossing guards could keep statistics on usage and, how this car stop rate, those sorts of things. The thought would be to move the one from the light at Meadowview to Ann Arbor and Kensington, and then put a new one at Baker, at the existing island. We do need to move forward on the bid is the only issue, so I guess if you want the Hawk signal in the bid, I can do that. It's just we'll have to pay for additional design beyond what we approved.
Ms. Pate?
I like your idea, Courtney. Not only does it save money, I think having a physical presence of a person there, I think, might be more helpful than having these kids try to navigate the Hawk.
Well, the schools, like the idea of only teaching them to use one thing, and then their other issue, the school's general issue with the crossing guards are only there 2 hours a day. So the beacons would still be there, 24/7. It's just at those peak times when it was the bigger groups of kids or more traffic for school hours, there would be someone to help at those, on Baker and Dexter and Arbor, because of the higher traffic volumes compared to the animal.
So we still have the rapid flashing beacon, correct, not the Hawk. Correct, rapid flashing plus a person.
Right, for those
Yes,
2 hours a day
right.
or whatever, yeah.
No, I like
But the
that
beacon
idea.
would be there for the after-school kids and the kids that don't
Sure.
cross at those times, or just regular people.
And on Ann Arbor Street, would that be rated Ann Arbor and Kensington?
Yeah,
Or
I think it would
be
still have to
mid-block?
be offset mid-block, yeah. Technically, the rapid flashing beacon's supposed to be mid-block.
Between
Inverness and
Kensington and
Kensington.
York. And how about this, the one on Baker, is that going to be, is
Right.
it identified to be straight across from where they are now, or?
Right now, it looks like it's gonna be at the island, because to really move it, we'd have to close driveways, which the schools aren't comfortable doing. So I think that for this first year, it would be at the island, and we'll see how that goes, because Dr. Timmis had said he could have the kids come out of that side door on Creekside, so,
It's gonna be their problem, not our problem.
yeah, it'll be there, and if it's
They're
just
gonna
not
walk
working.
longer ways.
Right.
It's a long way.
It's not, right, it's not ridiculous.
And as I said, I've seen those big groups come down from Wiley and from Mill Creek,
Mhm.
That's a problem with the people that are bringing them down. They'll just have to learn to do it there, and all Timmons has to do is tell them to do it instead of walk across the street
Right.
somewhere, okay?
Mr. Bell?
I agree with what Julie said. I think it's a good idea. It's, if after a year it doesn't work out,
Right, I mean,
we can reevaluate, but I think it makes sense on a lot of counts.
The facility town hall meeting doodle poll is in here, so I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts.
I didn't respond because I had so many blanks, okay, that I couldn't do it, but I can be there on the 10th. I can be there on Saturday the 13th. I'll be late. I'm still going to the forum. I'll be there in a half an hour. Okay. If all starts at 9, I could. And I could maybe do Wednesday on the 17th, but the other days I got 3 of the 6 that I couldn't do.
Well, I guess the question that I would have for council is, if we're gonna struggle to find a date that everybody can make it, are we trying to find that, or are we trying to have the meeting before a certain point in time?
Well, and I'll throw out the other questions. What do we want to take away? What's the purpose of this meeting? I'd mentioned, I've actually been in contact with one of the presenters who did the introductory, so you're building a fire station here, things you need to be aware of, and construction management presentations, to see about getting them to come here so that we can both educate ourselves and the public about this type of thing. I would very much like to include that as part of any meeting, public meeting on facilities.
Well, I'll have to think about that. I haven't thought too much about that, but I think that one of the takeaways from the previous meeting was that we were all over the map with options, as opposed to asking the public for their thoughts on a refined amount of options, or option, as the case may be, whatever. But we presented a lot of things at the last meeting. I think the general feedback was, why didn't you narrow it down, and then we'll give you our response. And maybe that's I don't know. So I thought the purpose of the next meeting was to try and do that. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, or that's what I thought I was gaining ground, learning from us.
So, to paraphrase, it kind of feels to me like a New England town hall, where here are 2 options for fire stations, you tell us what we're going to do. Is that kind of it?
It could be that way.
My concern with that,
It doesn't have to be that way. But
my concern with that is, I don't think anyone here would feel comfortable if the fire chief said, here's $1 million, go pick the fire truck for us to buy. And I don't think anyone in the public, aside from those actual firefighters, would be comfortable with that. And so if we're going to be counting the number of people who say, I want this and I want that, is that we have a duty to educate them for something that's going to be here much longer than a fire station, is much more expensive than a fire engine. And we haven't really done that. If we had a meeting at the beginning to determine policy of what's most important, is location most important, and damn the budget, damn everything else, if we have to tear down houses, so be it, or is the budget the most important thing? Those are types of good questions to get from a public that hasn't had some sort of background or introduction to that type of facility. But I think that those types of discussions sailed many, many moons ago.
Why do you say that?
Because it's been 5 years since this body has kind of invigorated the process. And those discussions, that policy should have been set at the beginning. Kind of like we did with the water treatment plant, where we kind of set the policy. We want to be able to accommodate the growth within our borders, and we want to make sure it's more efficient for staff to maintain, more efficient energy-wise, but that we can add things in the future. So that's kind of like the policy discussion we had at the beginning. And we said, you guys who are better, go do that. And we haven't really had that discussion. I think we all kind of have our general things. but we haven't ever had that. It's like we've been searching for a house for 5 years, and all of a sudden you decide you want to come up with a list of things.
Do you think we should have that discussion?
I think we should have had it, yes.
Well, why can't we have it?
I don't know. I've been pushing for it since I got on council, for us to have a list of criteria. A simple form like house hunter shows. You need 3 bedrooms, you need this, you need that. We haven't been able to articulate that throughout the process that I've been there.
So does that mean we shouldn't try? Or would it help? Would it help to explain it? I'm thinking out loud with you here, and I'm not really. Paul?
Well, I don't know if I use the word or the analogy, the ship has sailed. We made a motion last week, 2 weeks ago, that we further cease any efforts or expenditures to remodel, monitor, update the current fire station at 8140. Sounds like that's what you want to do. Have a discussion about 8140 with the public, when this body made a decision not to do that.
No, I wanted to have a discussion about the criteria that we're going to use to decide what the improvement should be.
And that
Because
was,
that's, I thought, Zach was proposing.
well, he may be, I don't know what he's proposing. Okay? But we have made a decision that we've got to decide how we're going to do it. We didn't do that at the last meeting, okay? What I heard at the last meeting, that there were a number of people that were maybe a little confused at the beginning, but when it came right down to it, they knew that there were 2 sites. It wasn't about another 3 or 4. Some people threw in, well, we got to think about the space here, but really it came down to 2. That's where it was. That's what the discussion is around town. You talk to people, they know very clearly that it's 2 sites, okay? And it's ironic to me that we, and I thank you for bringing it up, that we did a really good job with the wastewater treatment plant, determining what we needed. And we set a dollar figure, because that's what they told us was going to cost. Now, I guess, if I missed it, I missed it, but I remember one public hearing we had on that expenditure. Not one. $5.5 million. And we didn't have anybody input in anything from the public about doing that. You know why? Because it needed to be done. We need to be done in the right way, at the right level for this community. And that's what we decided. But now, because of this issue here, because there are 2 different sides, we're going to come up with all the machinations to try to figure out how we're going to mesh together. And I understand it's a difference, because it wasn't somebody saying we had to build one, or we had to build a half of one down there, or even say to Dan and the crew down there, see what you could do to make it cheaper by how much? One of the votes we took to make that fire station start down there was we said, we're going to vote to spend $2 million. Build something, David, for $2 million. And he failed miserably at it, because we made him fail. He couldn't do it. It's 3.5 or more, and it doesn't even complete everything that's there. A lot of spaces there that are not even finished off, let alone all the problems of 7 pages that Zach brought back, and 2 single-line pages that I remember that the chief put out. So for all that we've got, we're now going to have a discussion with the people, and some group are going to try to convince them that that's the place to go. This decision could have been made 5 years ago of how we're going to deal with this. Because the votes haven't changed in 5 years on this council. I took Mr. Carson's position, but he was for a new fire hall and not going there. It hadn't changed a bit. The other people are still here.
I was merely trying to answer the question, what were we going to present at the meeting?
No one said anything about it, you want for except for Paul. Because even if we do decide to build something on that, we still have to decide what it is we're gonna build. I don't think we're just.
I agree with you.
You know.
And that's why I would
there's
like to
conversation
have
about that, whether it's with the public or amongst us.
Zach's input with other people coming in and helping us out to make that decision in a forum could work.
And I do have a handout that this fella, reason I'm not supposed to share it with anybody who didn't go to the conference, but if I'm standing there at the computer and you overlook my shoulder. But it was a very good primer for folks who aren't, who can't wake up in the middle of the night and ask about the fire station design. It's a very good primer. The first presentation was an hour and a half. We talked about things we don't necessarily need to know because there are a bunch of firefighters in the room. And another one he gave was on construction management, which is important for these types of projects as well. So I think no matter what we do, it would be very valuable to help us understand and the public understand. Not necessarily at the detail level of the space has to be here or there, but yeah.
What about your other questions, though? I mean, you mentioned cost, you mentioned criteria, you mentioned location. Is that person going to lead us through that?
I will look up this thing, but it touched.
Because I think there's merit in your comments.
Yeah, it touched generally on those, and this fella has been personally involved in the design of 275 fire stations, so he's...
I'm sure he's more than qualified.
Yeah.
Nobody's convinced. I'm just saying that I think your questions are higher level, like, you know, the cover level of what we might spend. And that was what you suggested earlier.
Yeah. I believe he'd be able to help bring that conversation along and help focus.
What would you charge?
I don't know, I just got his email back today, we're going to be calling tomorrow. He is based in South Carolina, so we'd probably fly him out to the hotel and whatever, but...
Don't figure out $2,000 will probably cost him, how much to get him here and get him home and keep him here for a day in a boutique hotel.
You can see me in your house, Paul. Do you think that would be that would be more of a council thing though, not a public thing, or do you think that would be?
I think it would be important for the public as well. I'm not sure if there's a more detailed one for us and then kind of a general one for the public. Because as I've been trying to describe it with folks, and most recently with someone I know who's a car head, if you're not knowledgeable on cars and you're in 1990 buying a small hatchback for your kid, you can choose a Yugo that's $4,000, or you can choose a Mark II Volkswagen Golf that's $6,000. And so they both have the same shape, they both have the same function. One has a 0.9 liter engine, one has a 1.6 liter engine and disc brakes, the other has rotor brakes all around. So I think it's important, as if we've determined to engage the public in this instead of making a decision on our own half, like we did for the sewer treatment plant, is that we need to educate the folks, both now and so that later on, whatever we decide, and we say we need to charge you more money for your taxes to pay for this, that they'll have an understanding of why we have to do these things.
So the crux of Courtney's question, I think, originally was trying to pick a date. Should you put the whole summer out there on the doodle poll, and we fill in when we can figure out how to do this? Because we have to, if we know we're going to invite somebody to a meeting, or...
Well, I think I'm probably going to just have to move forward with this summer newsletter without a date, because we need to get the stuff out about the trash change. So I don't think we're gonna have a date by Friday, and that's when I wanted to send it to the printer, because we need to prepare people for the toters and all that goes with that. So, you know, we can always do a postcard or just our regular advertising, but I think I'll just forego, and then maybe we can try to figure it out at the next meeting. And I guess if you get some idea of whether this is a practical thing with this guy, or if maybe his schedule will probably be crazier than ours, especially.
I see. I didn't know you were done talking.
No, I didn't know if he's on, you were looking
All
at.
I could do is hear you.
I can wait till-
Mr. Bell?
Yeah, so I think there's merit to what Zach is suggesting. I personally would find it valuable to hear another voice on this, professional voice. And, you know, I'd like to, I think we should encourage Zach to get some information from this guy, find out how much the cost would be, as Donna suggested. I'd like to know who he is, and what his firm is, and yeah, and I think that probably postponing a decision on this next meeting until we get some of that information and know what his availability to meet with us is, that might be useful as well. I think there might be some value in council meeting with this person, independent of the public meeting, so that might help us formulate how a public meeting might go.
I think that's a good point.
Once we hear what what his perspective is, and so, you know, that was.
I agree with that. I'm okay with that. And I respect Courtney's need to get this newsletter out, particularly about the trash. I think it's going to be very important for people to do that.
Right.
Courtney, I have a question for you. You threw us a timeline, I don't have it in front of me anymore, about when we needed it to do if we have a November vote on it. When is the date that we have to have that in black and white?
That's in the MAV item, but I think it's August 22nd or something, Justin, do you remember?
Let's say August 2013.
It's the top of that spreadsheet.
To have a resolution and set a date,
Ballot
is August
language.
something?
Yeah,
August 12th is the last council meeting to approve the
yeah,
ballot.
it's in that MAV item, so.
Well, if we don't do something in July, we better have something that we do fairly quickly then if we're going to have a vote in November. We don't have to pay for it.
Well, we don't have a date where everybody can be at a meeting in July yet.
Sean, tell me right now, you may not have one. And we try to do the best we can.
Well, that's why I asked the question, are we trying to find a date everybody can be there, or are we trying to do a meeting because we've got another reason to do the meeting? That was my very first comment on it.
I mean, I could do dates between the 20th and the,
Yeah, why don't you go out on 2 weeks and see what's there?
Have we ever explored I know I've done this in some of my other meetings that I've had, you know, have we ever, is it legal to not be in the meeting and do it by phone?
well, those are normally work sessions anyway, they're not where we're voting. So the only time it isn't is if you're voting.
It's not illegal if you're voting, you can't be absent, you have to be there physically.
Yeah.
Yeah, proxy voting
To
is
vote.
allowed. We should-
Town hall meetings or work sessions, that's.
Got it, okay.
You get one of the youth to set up a FaceTime thing.
Well, we could do that on some of the others as well.
We are still under your report, I believe?
The only other thing I wanted to mention was just the timeline for Avalon. So it looks like they're going to come to Planning Commission for their public hearing on the PUD, the first meeting in August. So hopefully that means that council would see it the second meeting in August. Well, we have to decide when we want to have the public hearing on the land sale. It's required by charter, where we can basically sell them the land. So we were gonna set that for August 26th, thinking even if planning, it does get delayed at planning commission, we'd at least have a general site plan concept. And then the other public hearing is the pilot ordinance for the payment in lieu of taxes. And so we were thinking of having that public hearing on July 22nd, setting that at the next meeting.
So what was that one?
That one's for the pilot, the payment in lieu of taxes ordinance. similar to what was done with Walkabout, and we just need to do one specific for Avalon. And that would potentially be July 22nd. So they were just trying to figure out their timeline so they can make sure everything is done by October 1st. That's the deadline. And some of the stuff, like the pilot public hearing, has to be published to take effect on, so we just want to make sure everything gets done. We should be finalizing the waste management contract this week. I guess that's it. The Main Street signals are almost done, so that should be in the next 2 weeks if those go off. They're just working on the time, they're running the timing at the Carrier and Gable just to make sure that it works.
Mr. Bell?
2 questions real quickly. So you'll move ahead and put for the next meeting, we'll put the setting the public hearing on the agenda.
For
taking
the,
action.
yeah.
Secondly, this might just a question that was prompted by the waste management contract section here. What about disposal of old bins?
What bins?
Just
Old trash cans.
old trash bins, yeah. So I know that Justin and I talked to Waste Management about that, and I can't remember exactly what we came up with, but I think that we would have like a day where you could set out an old trash can and they would take it. Because, you know, they're very sensitive about taking trash cans. People freak out when they take their trash can.
Right.
So it would have to be
several
like,
people ask me about
yeah, it would probably have to be, and we'll include that in the literature that when we have it done, but it'll either be like maybe they get set out on a certain day and they come and get them very specifically for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the board?
Yeah, there's all kinds of little things.
More civilized than sure.
Yeah, I guess I'd be interested to know if they recycle them.
Yeah, I don't.
Well,
Question I don't know.
I didn't think about it because I have a barrel, and also put bags out, you know, depending on what we put it in that day. You know, I thought, well, it'd be nice to recycle my brand new trash can that I bought about a year ago into a bigger
For yard waste.
yard waste.
Yeah, so
I don't
they're-
think you can pick it up.
Well, they're talking, actually, that's one thing, and I don't know if this will work out, but Pat was talking about outfitting the yard waste trucks to be able to tip the larger cans so people could reuse them that way.
That's great.
But I'm not sure if that'll work. But that was an idea he had.
Anything further? Okay. Under my report, I'd like to just express that there has been a tremendous amount of effort over the last couple months, really, but a lot of effort on the part of our staff and on the school board and their staff to try to get this easement agreement and what's come out of it, a memo of understanding that they felt was important to have as well in place. My report references a couple of meetings, an internal meeting, I think on the 3rd, and I know we met on Friday the 6th and again today. We've come a long way since mid-April when there was concern over whether or not we were even going to have a path coming through the school property. And, you know, we're sitting here at 8:30 at night on a Monday, getting ready to approach that topic under new business. And the schools are simultaneously sitting at their meeting, and they're going to be approving, at least I believe approving, the same documents that we have in front of us, even though they aren't completely clean. A lot of times we see things at this board, in a very polished condition, and we sign off on it, it is what it is. And tonight's action that's coming up is we're asking council to give direction to staff to be able to sign these agreements and finish them if the i's aren't dotted and the t's aren't crossed exactly as you're looking at them tonight. So just keep that in mind when you're reading through the draft that Courtney put out in front of you. There's been a lot of good understanding and working towards getting this done, and I publicly appreciate that very much on behalf of the superintendent's office and his team. So I just wanted to acknowledge that at today's meeting, because this path, you know, we're known for our trails, we are known, and to have this one, I think is going to be fantastic. Even though we haven't bid it yet and we don't have, don't have the cost. We've got provisions for the extra money to help pay for it. We're getting there. The appraisal came back in a very favorable position for us. I don't know if anybody read that, but $17,900 is the cost of the easement. A few weeks ago, we were talking about $200,000. So I'm very happy that,
Hooray for trash.
yep, the floodplain and the trash, and it was recognized by the appraiser. So anyway, just want to say thank you to our staff for all the work on that, and publicly acknowledge that the school board's done a good job of certainly meeting us halfway and helping us, to get this done and on to the next step. There are a couple of things that as you read through there, that are not definitive, like how much fence needs to be across certain portions of the trail. What type of plants are we going to plant along the bank to discourage people from going down into the bank? There's been some of those discussions that will get defined as we go, but the bigger picture is,
The bank going down to the little creek.
yeah, they want to make sure that people aren't going that way, because it obviously goes towards Jenkins if you were to go that way. So
About poison.
well, the landscape architects brought up things like that, like prickery things, and anyway, just if you read some language in one of the memorandums of understanding about landscaping for screening, that's what that is. I'm mentioning all this under my report just while I'm thinking about it. The second thing, due to a work obligation, I am not going to be at the July 8th meeting. So, Mr. Cousins, if you're around, I'll need your help running that meeting, please.
Did you get my email about the proclamation?
Yep, that's the last thing. And then Paul has let me know that on the Lions Club proclamation that he's around on Sunday, June 30th to deliver that. So appreciate your help there again. If you can do that, I appreciate it.
And Paul will finalize that and I'll leave it for you.
Yeah, we'll have a signed copy of it, for you to present the data.
Yeah.
It'll be a nice on paper and, yeah.
Framed or
And
something?
then I'll let Terry Walters, he was the one I was with.
Be happy to.
So that is my report for now. As we get to the consent agenda, I will be calling a roll call vote instead of all those in favor. So your patience once we do the motion in a second. I just want to don't forget to do that, since we found out that we're supposed to be doing it that way.
So say it again?
Under consent agenda in the past, we've always done all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Okay.
Okay, but
We have to do a roll call vote.
we have to do a roll call vote
Yeah, yeah.
because that can only be used for procedural items. So I'm going to have to get used to a new routine. So
With the new routine, usually if it's on here, it's on here, unless you want to take it off, and use the same method
That's
for that.
yep. So if you prefer to have something come off, you do that under approval of the agenda, or right now, I guess if you make a motion to suspend the whatever.
Yeah, okay.
But so okay. So unless anybody has any questions for me, does anybody have any questions for me on anything? Okay. I'll move on to consent agenda then, please.
Okay, I move we approve the 6 items on the consent agenda. Bills and payroll in the amount of $768,786.05. The closure of Quackenbush for a graduation party on June 29. The resolution on a local residence to petition in writing to the Board of Review. The proposal from PLZ for audit services. The selection of Jen Cowdy as photographer for the CTAP grant project. And the park use permit for the sale of alcohol by the firefighters during Dexter days.
Second. Motion by Fisher, second by Smith. Thank you both. Ms. Jones, if you would please call the roll.
Fisher?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes. Motion carries. All items on the consent agenda have been approved. We have no old business this evening, so we're on to page 4 of our agenda. We have 7 new business items.
Before we start, can we take a little break?
We can if you want.
We'll have a few minutes to
Yep.
read that.
Okay, we'll come back in 5 minutes to 10 to 9, please. Or sooner if everybody's ready.
shoes were a hit, Paul.
That,
The shoes were a hit, so thanks.
oh, that's good, good. When I got mine, I said, what are these?
Right. Yeah, when you mentioned them, I never heard of them.
Yeah, I didn't either. Good.
So Bob, did you ask if you could, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ask if you could initiate a rezoning request?
Shell Sites should present it to you, and I'm not quite sure what to do.
Let's get it fixed up and figured out for you.
Okay.
Let's figure that out for you.
But for 24 years, it's been zoned.
Yeah, and that got by me, because that happened in '95, and I wasn't aware it happened. If I was aware of it, I would have, bought the subject up, and I thought it was maybe just a mistake.
Gotcha. Gotcha, okay.
So is there something that can be done here?
Rather than say the wrong thing, we'll get back to you on it, but tonight we won't be doing anything other than probably, I'm guessing when we get down to number 3, we're gonna approve distribution of the master plan. At some point in time, I guess I'd like to better understand what your options are, or whether we just start trying to change it in the master plan at this point. But putting it in the master plan one way doesn't necessarily rezone your property.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I know for sure, is if no matter what we have the master plan say, it doesn't mean that your property's rezoned.
Then it comes back to here.
We'd have to do a formal process to do that.
So then I would make a formal request to rezone it.
Yes. Yes. Which I'm thinking is probably necessary, but that's what I'm thinking the next step is, I'll talk to Michelle offline. I just wanted to tell you what I'm thinking, what we're thinking, I think. Zach's not, so he's saying some things that he's thinking.
I'm not sure how important it is, and it doesn't really affect our operations, but I'm just thinking long-term.
Well, as long as you're not urgent in terms of expecting something to happen today, we'll work through it as a group.
Yeah, that's fine. It's been an issue for a long time, so 2 months isn't going to make any difference.
Right, agreed.
So that's something we should take care of. Appreciate your help.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. All set? Jim? Paul, Jim is back. Jim's back. Jim is back. So am I. I know. Thank you. Okay, everybody's ready to resume?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll resume. We are on new business item L1, consideration of an easement agreement with Dexter Community Schools for Mill Creek Park Phase 2 Trail.
Can I make a motion to adopt it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And can you make that subject to, final?
Yeah, something to minor modifications, is that what it should say? Dates, are they dates or are they?
So the only thing left right now, I believe, is just some,
Hold on, let's get this motion in a second.
I'm gonna make it that we approve it with minor modifications as the staff suggests.
A second. With an authorization to cut a check for the amount in the agreement. Okay, so motion by Cousins, second by Bell. Okay, so take it away, please.
yeah, the two things that aren't in here are the cost, and there's some language issue in section 9 with indemnity, or not indemnity, but you can't indemnify, but there's a sentence in here that says the city shall reimburse the district for all costs, liabilities, claims, and expenses incurred by or asserted against the district. And that was too broad for our attorney because, if somebody says I stubbed my toe and they assert that, we're not gonna necessarily pay them $500. So what they wanted to say was, if there's cost to investigate or look into a claim that they incur, we would pay that back, and that's fine. It's not necessarily gonna go to the person. And any claim is just gonna come to our insurance company anyway. It'll just go right to MMRMA and they'll deal with it. So the school shouldn't be incurring any cost. So that's just a language tweak that the attorneys, I think he was supposed to have a draft back tomorrow. but our attorney had talked to him about it on Friday. That's not something that they felt would hold anything up. Lawyer language. But everything else was signed off on.
Yeah, so the cost is $17,900. So that probably needs to be in the motion to approve the easement agreement and payment for $17,900. Carol, some type of, again, we typically have the number or something like that in there.
And the acreage, I think, is 0.45 or.
Yeah, it's just under half an acre.
There may need to be a change because this says that the value of the consideration is less than $100, which isn't true, so we need to figure that out, but nothing substantive at this point, I hope. The only language in here, I guess, is worth pointing out is the fence language, which is in 5, so that basically says we don't have to install a fence with the original project, but if they request within 5 years that we add a fence, they have the right to do that. So at least it gives us a chance to get the project done and then see if there are issues before we install the fence.
Again, their primary concern is people parking in the lot and getting right on the trail. And they believe the fence will discourage that, so they're gonna.
I would handle that with this same as if somebody parked in your driveway and didn't move for 5 hours.
Well, and we can put signage and, that kind of stuff, but. So that was really, I think, one of the larger additions in the last draft, but it's nice not to have to put it in now, honestly.
Zach?
Question about before this has come up in discussion, that's the limitations where it limits to non-motorized use. Has there any been discussion about that, whether or not that includes the folks in the three-wheelers who have it motorized because of multiple sclerosis, or the little wheelie things or the little scooters? I don't want...
I think it says in here that it's including but not limited to, you can't, if it's an Americans with Disabilities Act covered transportation device, yeah, then we could limit it.
But the kid on the hoverboard is not, that is motorized.
Right, it's supposed to not be, yes, motorized, unless it's a disability issue.
Okay. Something we may want to pay attention to, I remember when I was on the Transportation Information and Technology Legislative Committee, the state was looking at changing how motorized bicycles up to a certain point were classified so that they could use non-motorized trails as well.
We've been trying to have this language reviewed by OHM and who else to make sure it's okay with the grant and all that stuff.
OHM looked at it originally when there was a clause in there that talked about no public dedication. It was just a strange clause, so they've eliminated that. So OHM had read it originally and didn't have any issue besides that.
Okay. Any other council questions on the easement? Seeing none, Ms. Jones, if you would do a roll call vote to approve the easement agreement with Dexter Community Schools and authorizing the city manager the right to sign the agreement, finalize the agreement, and make payment for $17,900. Something like that, right?
Yeah, we'll work it out.
Bell?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. New business item L2 is important. It is consideration of the creation of a memorandum of understanding between the City of Dexter and the Dexter Community Schools that outlines the future collaborative relationship between the two entities.
The motion I had in here was for both.
Oh, sorry, you're doing both at the same time? Yeah. Sorry, I guess I didn't. Okay, so everybody have and the memorandum of understanding related to the easement agreement?
Yep. That was emailed out and is printed.
Everybody have those in front of them?
Point of clarification, is it to direct staff to continue working on this over 60 days or to adopt
No.
what we got here?
So it's it's kind of the same as we just did with the easement. There's some final tweaks. You can see I've got some stuff in writing on it that we talked about just today. They're not substantive, or they shouldn't be substantive, so it's kind of the same. And that's why I had in here that the mayor and city manager would have the right to sign them as long as they're substantially the same as what was presented today. And that's almost a carbon copy of what the schools are gonna hopefully be passing for Dr. Timmons to say, hey, we get that this is what you guys worked on, and it's close, there might be a few more tweaks, so it's kind of the same thing as the easement.
The big things are like, they're gonna, the MOU says, you know, that for matters related like trash and garbage pickup, they have the right to bid that service instead of using the single hauler that we have. You know, forever it's been waste management, they've used waste management, but they want the right, if they could save $7 grand or $10 grand, to be able to use somebody else. So we're essentially conceding that in the MOU, that if they want to bid that service and save the district $7 grand, they can do that.
Don't we still have to approve that through our ordinance?
Well,
if they're not using our contracted?
and that's where we need to follow through the potentially, Zach. The bigger issue was that the waste management contract that we approved, we weren't sure if waste management was going to be okay with that change, and Courtney's talked to Pat Creevy, and when she mentioned that she was going to be finalizing the arrangement, Pat's okay with the understanding that they would be bidding that service.
And we're hoping that it won't be necessary, because their rates are changing with the new contract and going down slightly, and they're changing some of their service, so it may not actually happen. Yeah, so it may not actually be an issue, but you know, because of their standing as kind of a separate unit of government, it's just, I don't know, it's just not something that it's kind of worth a big hullabaloo over, honestly, so. Kind of picking our battles. You know?
No one to hold them, no one to hold them, right?
The second, and then let me just finish this. The second thing that we're sort of giving up, if you will, or agreeing not to do is if they're installing storm sewer on their property, we're agreeing that we don't have to provide full-time inspection for it. We're retaining the right to inspect the connection to the city's storm system, i.e. the outlet structure, the detention pond, that part of it, but not necessarily laterals that would serve parking lots that are essentially theirs, not ours, even though it's all the water would come to us. They view that as an excessive cost for something that we don't really end up owning or have ultimate jurisdiction over. So in an effort to try and be efficient in the use of inspection dollars, we retained the ability to do full inspection for water, public water, and public sewer installations, which are, you know, certainly important to us and important to the Dan and his team. So the agreement still provides that they would pay for those inspections.
But not anything internally.
Well, if it's public water and sewer, it's us.
Yeah.
But not the storm sewer. The storm sewer internally we wouldn't do.
But I would assume there are times with the design and execution of that design report, if they've got traps to get silt and that type of stuff.
Right, and those areas where it connects to our system are still eligible for
So the
inspection.
idea then would be designed with that, where it connects instead of having the trap within the parking lot?
Well, Zach, I think the best way to say it was, the other thing that this agreement formalizes, and it's, I think, something that maybe we tried to do, but the schools might have jumped ahead on, is there has to be a meeting before they begin design with the city to discuss the things that they're trying to do on the project. In listening to Courtney and Michelle and Dan, oftentimes the school's designers were already out of the gate and down the road designing and putting pen to paper on things when we first talked to them about stuff. And then if we made a comment or something that said, hey, you didn't follow this or didn't follow that, they felt like we were causing them to have to redo something or spend extra dollars, when in fact, if we'd met ahead of time, we would have said, you need to do it this way or whatever. So the important part of this agreement that's on the last page, right before the signature lines, is that everybody agrees that they'll schedule a meeting before they initiate design and that we'll talk through the best way to be efficient in the use of inspection dollars for both parties so that we cover our needs and theirs. So, details like where to put the traps, for example, they could ask those questions ahead of time, Zach, and pending a meeting with our engineer or Dan or whoever it is that's going to give the authority, give the answer, can instruct them ahead of time. Does that make sense? They can talk about it in concept before it's actually put in hard.
It put impossible deadlines on things and made everything a rush because everything was already done and then we were looking at it and then it was just a delay and we had to give comments. Or it was considered a delay, so.
So we're trying to take us out of the we're delaying them role and at the same time put us in a position to cover the things that we need to be checking and have the regulatory or fiduciary responsibility to check. Scott, thanks for waiting. You have your hand up.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Ready for a motion?
Yeah, please, sorry, yes.
Make a motion to authorize the mayor and the city manager to sign the 2 memorandums of understanding in substantially the same form as was been presented to council in conjunction with the Dexter Community Schools.
So motion by Smith. Second by Bell, thank you both. Further discussion? Zach?
1A on page 1, there's some strikeout there, and I think this ought to be, I forget exactly what the phrasing is, but that they're exempt from zoning with regards to instructional facilities and athletic facilities.
Yeah, I think, so that for only those buildings and projects designed for school purposes was from the case law, and we had added that.
And they don't.
So they,
case law.
well, they thought that it was covered under the governmental functions. So when they're performing their governmental functions, that would be the building and projects designed for school purposes. That was how they struck it from this draft. And they do mention in here specifically that if they're doing something commercial, it doesn't. That's in here somewhere. Yeah, on page 3, it says the city retains authority to regulate commercial improvements, even if they generate revenue for the school occurring on school property.
So Zach, that paragraph has had many, many eyes on it. I'm with you on the comments.
Yeah.
We initially struck regulatory and had it say zoning, and they pushed back hard on that.
Well, but that's a case law. We have a separate standalone police power ordinance for signs. They got to follow it, right?
Right, and that's why I did say largely exempt from local requirements, including zoning. Before, it said largely exempt from regulatory requirements, so we, yeah, kind of changed that around a little bit.
We didn't want the word regulatory in there because we thought it then covered it was eliminating the things that we wanted to include regulatory authority on in number B or 1B. But Courtney will have Steve Esty review it before finalizing it.
Yeah,
He has this draft now, but he hasn't been able to look at it today before the meeting, so.
So what's going to happen when they have to put in left turn lanes, stop signs, traffic control for a new school building?
Well, that's,
Are we footing the bill entirely?
well, that's a great question. I mean, the way this is written, yes. I asked them how they're getting through their audit of the several $100,000 that they spent on Dan Hoy. They said they were still working through that.
But that would be a
But the-
discussion before the project.
But the reality also, Zach, is that there's
Little places for them to need to
not,
do this.
yeah, not like, they don't have much room within the city to build a building, that would require that kind of traffic need. I mean, when you look at it, they used up the largest spot for a building. If they were to build another one, it's likely to be out next to the high school somewhere. And it would be, it'd be the road commission and not the city, was sort of the way I looked at it.
Your target thing would be if the island were moved closer to the roundabouts, and they say, sure, we're going to close the driveways, you guys get paid for redoing the curb because it's outside of our property.
Well, the ingress egress is still okay. They can pay for ingress egress. It's
Okay.
just ingress egress adjacent to their property. So like they they can do like acceleration, deceleration lanes.
So we're
Those
just
are-
going to design it off of the right of way.
Right, well, yeah, it'll just be designed, yeah, based on what they can do. But yeah, we should be past kind of the large traffic changes.
But
And
good-
on
good
some
catch.
building projects.
Other questions?
The only thing in the other memorandum of understanding is that comment that's on the, about the landscaping. We didn't want to put that in the actual easement document, so there's a clause about landscaping for the screening would be mutually agreed upon prior to the installation. That would be like the bushes along the trail, yeah. And that's something we could use, tree money for potentially, just depends on what it turns out to be. But if it was trees or, larger bushes.
It should be a smaller expense relative to the whole, so that was the thought. We'll defer it.
So we're trying not to add too much to the actual project, because if it gets past a certain point, then it starts triggering things that I'm not, that we can't have happen. So we need to not have, I'm glad we don't have the fence in the project, I'm glad we don't have the landscaping, extra landscaping. We need to keep it so that it's under the NDOT threshold, if it doesn't raise any red flags.
Okay, I'm being patient on purpose because you haven't had a chance to look at this before. Is everybody good with what the two memorandums are? Okay. Carol, if you could please call a roll call vote.
Knight,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Motion carries. New business item L3, consideration of the distribution of the draft master plan to surrounding communities.
I move to distribute the draft master plan.
I'll second and make it in accordance with PA 33, 2008 as amended.
Yep.
Okay, so just like on page 117. So motion by Michelle, second by Smith. Okay, I'll turn this over to,
So you've got the part that I've asked you to, which is to make your motion. Megan's going to fill you in, give you a brief overview of the master plan update.
So I'm Megan Masson-Minock. I've had the pleasure of working with you and your planning commission over almost the past 2 years in this master plan. I know you've had a long meeting tonight, so I just want to really briefly go over what different components are in the master plan, what's changed since you were last had a touch point in October, and then answer any questions that you had. So in terms of the process that's been so far, we started with you back in this summer of 2017, along with the Planning Commission, walking through what the priorities would be for the process. We had some intensive community engagement with walking tours and a booth at Apple Days, talking to the public about what should be in the master plan in terms of an update. Also, there was a parking study that was done, existing land use survey, looked at background studies in terms of census data. Also, we looked at adjacent communities and what their plans are doing, what their plans have scheduled. And also talked to you and Planning Commission a lot about what you wanted to do in terms of planning for if land adjacent to the city of Dexter was asked to be annexed in, and what that situation would be, because the master plan was silent on that. Goals and objectives, and then there was a community meeting in October 2018 to present this, and since then we've been refining with the Planning Commission. Wanted to walk you just through what the general purpose of each chapter is, and I'll do that quickly. Stop me if you have any questions about each one of those as we go through. The introduction is really to talk about the purpose of what the master plan is, how it's to be used. It gives the historic context for that master plan here within the city of Dexter, how many times it's been done, what the purpose of each one was, what the planning process was for this. Also setting the city in the regional context, and also giving a brief history of the village, now city. The next chapter was existing land use and looking at community plans. So to really see the context of what things are in the ground and the snapshot of right now. And then looking forward, the next chapter dealt with community goals and objectives. There are several community goals, but the overarching one, which was a change from the last one, was to have an overarching goal to guide development, to foster the responsible use of land, conserve natural features, preserve small town character, and to make an energy efficient, sustainable use of existing public services, utilities, and infrastructure. So the idea that this is the guiding point for all land use decisions in the city. It's documented there. Your future land use map from what is current to what's the draft before you tonight is different. Before that, future land use map almost was like an existing land use or zoning map, and it documented and kept the policies in place on the ground. Your input and planning commission's input was we're going to look a little bit further out and a little more general so we can give ourselves some more flexibility for changing situations, and especially the ability to grow up rather than out. And so you'll notice that that future land use map has a lot more cohesiveness in color instead of like a patchwork quilt. And that was deliberate. There are, again, two big changes that happened at the Planning Commission level between October and now. There's a Village Residential 2 future land use area, and that is the annex of the village, so that second plat that came for the village. Originally, that was talked about as only a single family district. It was pointed out that there are several duplexes already in that area, and that the Planning Commission decided at the last meeting, right before the recommendation to you, that they would like to include two-family as a use that would be allowed there. Also, the 2-7 blocks of forest between the alley at Baker and Broad were updated from village commercial to downtown. And that was so that like faces like. So on the street, so that you had downtown facing downtown, and really so you didn't have taller and a little bit shorter. And so that street would feel cohesive as you walked down it. So those were changes that you hadn't seen when I know the majority of you came to that meeting. That was in the library in October. Any questions on those two changes?
Not on those two changes.
Okay, on the future land use map? Yeah.
Well, back under the existing,
Yeah.
there's a reference to table 1, but I don't think table 1's actually in here.
Yeah, I think table 1 was changed to the pie chart, so we can.
I think, my comment, I think it's important to list the total acreage of the city.
Okay.
Just relative to, because you mentioned that there's like 31 acres of vacant land.
Mm-hmm.
Relative to what, if there's 1,500 acres of total, 31 is 2% or 0.2% or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that if you could.
We can put the table back in.
Okay.
There's room there.
On the other things, I think the boundary, and I tried to ask Michelle this question, the boundary on the various maps changes, or the background, one of the two.
Yeah.
I can't quite tell. It doesn't always follow the same line, the same parcel lines. And I'd like to see that as consistent as we can make it across the different figures. Really, there's only one spot. It's on the west side over near Mill Creek Park where we added the land we got from Rick Berner.
Yeah, the maps were done at various times and the boundary changed in between. We double checked that.
Yeah, it's a small thing, but if you get a chance.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anything else up until the point where I've gotten to?
A quick one with the boundaries, the figure 5, generalized commercial land use map. 22 of the draft plan, page 142 of the staff report. There's that little bit that's shaded south of the industrial park, which is implying it's not within the city, but the lines there are correct. Just a little ticky-tack thing. And then I wanted to make sure, figure 6, page 30 of the plan, page 154 of the report, want to make sure I understood what you said. So on Grand, are all those red properties village commercial? as shown here for the future land use map, or the downtown now?
All the ones on Grand Street, or?
What page are you on again, Zach?
Page 30 of the draft.
Thanks.
Page 154 with the.
So you're on the future land use map?
Yep.
And you were talking about the change that was made by the planning commission? So that would have been on Forest between Broad
Okay,
and Baker.
gotcha.
And the southern part
All right.
had been that red.
Gotcha. So boundaries within the alley then.
Yeah,
All right, I'm all set. Thank you.
thank you. All right. Also in the future land use map, what we did with direction from the planning commission was to really look at building forms as well, so what types of buildings are there, to set the city up if it wanted to in the zoning ordinance update that you were looking at to do pretty soon after this master plan was approved, is to have building forms in there so you could look at a form-based code in different places. And a form-based code is a type of zoning that many communities like yours have used in order to preserve its small town character, and if you and also in some ways to look at historic preservation without a historic preservation district. So to make sure that those buildings can, different buildings can be different places, but still keep the form and whatnot. So this sets you up to do that, and that's the reason for that addition of those. And then also there were some additions in that future land use on looking at really density to give some guidance to folks when you were looking at future land use decisions. And the planning commission, instead of looking at a dwelling unit per acre, really looked more at what's the appropriate height and what's the appropriate bulk in each of the districts, especially in your smaller parcels in the downtown. Once you get into dwelling units per acre, it can seem pretty egregious pretty quick, like 17 units per acre, but or 72, I think, in some cases. But you might be looking at a third of an acre, and it's really not that many units. So really, they felt that it was more important to have the scale of the buildings be appropriate to what's existing and to preserve that character. Then also there's a zoning plan, which is required by state law. And then also there was a new section on planning for properties that were outside the city limits. And I hope that reflected discussions that we have had with you and also with the planning commission. There's a mobility plan, which essentially deals with transportation and looks at public transportation and non-motorized transportation in addition to your road structure and infrastructure for vehicles. The background studies is the second to last chapter, and that goes over census data and then also different plans that the city has for its infrastructure and whatnot. So that's really, again, that another snapshot in time, and also looking compared to your neighbors and where they're going to grow. And the short story on that is that the city of Dexter is a place with great schools, great parks. People want to move here. You're growing. You have family, people who are forming families, but you're also going to have some growth in senior citizens. And so you're going to have some in your senior population. So you're probably looking at a lot of real estate pressure and a lot of people wanting to come here. But also then we talked to the planning commission about also one of the things about that is balancing the needs of people who are here and how do you do both. And how do you set the master plan up so that when you're making land use decisions, you're looking at both of those. Finally, there's an implementation chapter, and it has a little more on zoning than your current master plan does, because we had direction from staff that you would probably be doing that soon, and for that to be there and to have those discussions with the planning commission at this time. Also looking at additional regulations and ordinances, and then what we also did was take a lot of the strategies that before were in your goals and objectives, and instead take those out of the goals and objectives, because they didn't apply to every land use situation that you would get into in something like a rezoning or a special land use, but put them in this implementation chapter, so then that this is something that planning commission can go to and city council can go to when you're planning and budgeting and going through capital improvements and all the other things you do every year, that you have this here rather than it being integrated into that goals and objectives. And we hope that that would be a useful addition. Also talked about your capital improvement program, what should be done and continue to be done about plan education and plan updates. And there's an implementation table at the end that looks at tasks, slides timeframes and priorities, and also responsibilities. Any other questions or suggestions or concerns on the draft itself?
So I'd like to ask you a question about, on page 48 of the draft master plan, it talks about light industrial. And in light of the gentleman that we have here from Alpha Metals, it says intent, this designation is intended to allow for the continued operation of the current industrial uses. Or for areas planned outside the city's borders. So with that statement in mind, why wouldn't the current light industrial use have the reflected light industrial matching zoning?
The planning commission did have a 20-minute conversation about this, and really two things is number one.
I realize that this doesn't rezone it, but if the master plan would show the future use of that as well.
And so, and I'm going to depend on Michelle and Mr. Smith also to correct me if I'm wrong. But first of all, they were very hesitant to do it just for one parcel at this time in the master plan, because we've gone fairly far, and this wasn't something that popped up during the time. Also, really looking at what's next door with MedHub, thank you, and what's going on across the street. That it's a village commercial designation in the master plan. That would allow transition to an office or a different sort of use other than the industrial, and it wouldn't necessarily prevent a different use of the building. So looking to the future of that one parcel and looking at it in a context, and again, looking at this as a future land use map, not an existing, carrying on just existing policies. What did they want it to be? And what should it be? And the planning commission basically deferred to say, we don't feel comfortable at this time because we haven't had the level of analysis and we don't want to hold this up for this one parcel. And if the property owner came in for rezoning, we would go through a different level of scrutiny on this one parcel that we don't feel like we should do right now because of where we are in the overall document and the overall process for the entire city. Does that sum up what the feeling was? That doesn't mean that you couldn't look at this now, but one thing I would caution you about is then you might have a whole lot of people coming to you in the next 3 months looking for equivalent of a de facto rezoning. Because once you change that on the map, it's going to go through a cascade, and you're pretty much saying in a public way, like, we've looked at this, we think this is fine, and then there might be an expectation of that applicant that you would absolutely rezone it to it once they filed that.
For clarity, just in case anybody that we've given the wrong impression, village commercial is what the master plan currently has this property.
Mm-hmm.
Planning commission has not changed that. We're maintaining that. So this direction was set a number of plans ago. In the interim, what has happened is MedHub happened, and the planning commission would like to see, that happen again in the future. Should Alpha Meadow not be there anymore, it can continue to operate, like Mr. Wood said. It can continue to operate as long as they're there. But in the future, the planning commission now and previous iterations has been looking at something that is more in keeping with that area. That's why that block is all village commercial across the street, south across the street from the village residential that's across the street.
There's only one spot though, right?
No, you've got a block of village commercial, and Mr. Woods is one property in that block.
Yeah, but the other property is
Yeah.
one business.
I'm sorry?
The problem is if I'm looking at the future land use map correctly, if Alpha Metals was light industrial, it would actually blend very well with the properties to the west of there towards the treatment plant. It's right next to.
Right.
But what it would leave is Med Hub as a big red not eyesore, but
Island.
island. The other one becomes an island. So then they, by having two properties in that block, if you will, whatever it is, between Broad and Huron as it bends, they don't have one isolated village commercial property, which is the Med Hub property.
But how about the property across the street from Midtown? The old lumberyard.
Well, somehow that's village residential, miraculously. I don't think I've ever agreed with that, but it is.
I don't.
It's in there.
My fault.
Which
But
one
I
are we
don't know
talking about
that- I
across
don't know
the
that-
street?
Well, the former lumberyard there. Well, the former glass lumberyard there, Carpenter Lumber.
Across Broad.
Oh,
Broad
across
Street.
from Broad Street.
Yeah.
Right.
But my argument would be we have little parcels of red all over the place dotted in, and I don't know that it matters if it was light industrial, but I guess. I guess I'd like to talk to some people on the planning commission. I don't see the harm in if it was Apple Meadows was zoned light industrial, frankly. I mean, it's not like we have a big continuous running sea of red anywhere other than what we're trying to show on Grand Street.
And then the fact of the matter is that the residential across the street has been residential since day one. Okay, that was some of the first development in the city.
You're talking along here on there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
You're welcome. So we did have a question though for you. That was in the memo.
On page 32
Yeah.
and 33, the graphics there. The graphics at one point, folks would say, for the multiple family, the one on the left feels especially suburban, and the same thing for the townhouse one on the right. It would be nice to have a bit more of an urban-y feeling thing. Not to say they're bad projects, but both of those feel more in place in Pittsfield Township.
Okay.
Page you on?
32 and 33.
They might be in Pittsfield Township.
Yep.
Because they're not here.
Well, the one for townhouses is, no, that's not the one along Oak Valley. It has that feel.
Yeah, no, those can easily be updated.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So our question for you was in the about graphics in the community background. So specifically, if you go to page 64 and 65 in the draft, it's mostly tables. And it really, if you are someone who loves to read every line, you will get the story. But we also know that not everybody reads every line and consumes information like that. One of the requests we got from the Planning Commission after they looked at their first drafts is, in this community background, can you put more graphics in? And basically, kind of the story there is that during the 2000s, your population grew. And in fact, you were one of the fastest growing municipalities in southeastern Michigan. However, when you look at this line on this table, and on this line chart, you know, with going between 2000 to 2040 in terms of your projections, what's due is to level out. Basically, because you don't have a lot of vacant land left. You don't have a lot of buildable spots. To put this in, we got to juggle a little. We can take more information out. We would have to spend a bit more time on formatting and making this look good in order to put this in and on all the tables. So we wanted your input onto whether to just keep it as it is or release to communities. And then on the next draft, if you wanted, we could put that in. We could just simply replace table 2 with that line graph, or we could keep them both so that know that we as your consultants need to spend a little time. We have budget to do it. But I could not take this tomorrow and send that and give it to Michelle to send out to adjacent municipalities. It would take us a little, it would take us some time, and it would look different by at least a page or 2.
I would say leave it out.
Okay.
If I was going to put it in, I'd want to change it from what it is.
Okay.
Well, 'cause I wouldn't have the same solid line going all the way up to 2040. I'd have it be dashed from current
okay.
until whatever the estimated thing is, because that's anybody's guess.
Okay.
But I don't think it adds anything that they can't see in the chart. Personally. Maybe that makes me a line item reader.
Oh, gosh. Too late for these dead jokes.
I personally try to write for 3 types of readers: the line item, the people who read at a glance, the people who you're looking for what you want, and then those who don't read it out.
All those.
I would say, I agree, process moving.
So that's got to keep the process moving and
So next steps would be that the choices for you before you tonight is to release to adjacent communities, or you could give specific instruction and send it back to the planning commission. After that, there's a 63-day comment period by adjacent municipalities, county regional authorities, utilities, and then the planning commission would hold a public hearing. They would make a recommendation, and you would ultimately approve that. So if you were looking at doing this tonight, really, you could have probably an adopted master plan have back to you by your September meeting.
So the motion on the table is to distribute it as is. For the recommendation on, whatever page that was, 117. Motion by Zach, second by Smith. Any further council comments? Please call the vote.
Cousins,
yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Keo.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Megan, for all your work on that.
Thanks, Megan.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's our pleasure.
New business item L4, discussion of purchase agreement with MAV for the property on Dexter Ann Arbor Road.
So this was requested by council as a draft for this meeting. It's set up based, and then what we did is, because it's confusing with having the 2 sort of timelines for closing, the quicker closing and the lengthier closing, that's why there's a chart that sort of outlines those. MAB did review the draft. They added something that, I forget exactly even what section it is in, but it's not anything really substantive, it's just lawyer stuff. The only thing that's kind of outstanding is some of the deposit language. So right now, I think it will be that if we were to terminate July 22nd, it should have said that 10,000 would stay with MAB and 10,000 would come back to the city. That was what was in the letter of intent. And then at the end of the inspection period in November, it would be 20,000 to MAB and 20,000 to the city. But generally the dates are fine and approved by MAB. That was probably the biggest change, was just trying to figure out the dates based on council meetings.
What was 10 and 10?
10 and 10 is June 22nd, or July 22nd,
Instead of what?
instead of 20, back to the city. We would lose 10 if we didn't
That's what
take the property.
Matt wants to?
That was what was in the letter of intent. I just had the dates wrong, because I had to make the letter of intent into, because the letter of intent was dated, May or April, so I didn't realize that it was the end of the inspection period where 10 went back to MAB and 10 went back, or 10 would go to MAB, 10 would go to us. So that just needs to be updated.
And then where's the 20 and 20?
And then November 11th. The termination is 20 to MAB and 20 to the city.
Instead of the 10 and 30 that's on there.
Correct. Or the 40 that was in a MAB original, the 40 to MAB that was in their original draft. I think that was a mistake on their part too. So. Anyway, those are the things they're still working on since the initial draft.
And on June 24th, there is potentially another option of not voting to enter.
Right, there's always that option. None of this starts unless council actually votes to do it.
Council questions on the red line or the flow chart?
Thank you for the flow chart. It's reminds me of Back to the Future when they go back to wherever and there's casinos and all that stuff and have Charles Chocolate.
Yeah, it was hard to, Justin thankfully is good at making charts.
Justin, this was your idea. It was the Courtney's idea.
Justin's implementation, that's the idea.
Team effort.
Yeah, thank you. There's something else.
You guys pay road.
So when do you expect to hear from them? Because you have, and that was the only time they had the lawyer.
That and the two spots in the deposits that they didn't agree with. So I sent back some comments on those on Friday, so I imagine, but I told him I wasn't gonna have it re-reviewed by our attorney until after this meeting. The one thing we did talk about was that the due diligence period, really the main thing that we would wanna do is phase 1. So that would have to be done in the month of July. We can actually get county brownfield money for that. And ASTI thought they can complete it within 3 to 4 weeks, so. I don't expect a lot to come up from that since the Rainbow property was just phase 1 and didn't have an issue, but we would still want to do it.
Zach, is your hand up?
Yeah, I was thinking, and then I got it up, and then I started thinking again. The page 213, the red lines or mustard yellow lines, are those the ones that were added by Seller?
No, those were added by Scott.
Okay, but they have attested that there is no...
Yeah, so they changed that language to, like, as the seller's aware, they added a phrase that said, based on the seller's knowledge or something, couching that a little, but yes, that's in there still in the, So yeah, the red lines in this were Scott's and or mine.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay. So new business item L5 is consideration of appointment of alternate and/or planning commission cap-dart representative. Zach, you had suggested this item, so I'll let you respectfully maybe make the motion the way you would like it to be phrased.
Well, I don't know who's the most recent one to go off the bat. So, CapDART, for those of you not familiar, is kind of a very informal regional group that we participate in with the City of Dexter, City of Chelsea, and then the 6 surrounding townships. The idea is that we get together and we share what's going on. Sometimes we exchange wheels so we don't have to reinvent it. The group has worked on a transportation plan for the area that we've all kind of adopted as one of our planning documents. Several of the communities have alternate numbers, so if the main number isn't able to be there, someone goes. The City of Chelsea has recently appointed a planning commissioner to attend, with the idea that you get a different perspective having someone from that body there. There have been some times this past year when I haven't been able to go to work, and I think it would be good for us to have someone there to participate, both to share what we're doing and to hear what's going on in the area. So I thought it was worth bringing up for discussion and possible action.
I like the idea of the planning commission member.
Can you and Michelle ask them at their next meeting? Obviously, just pick someone.
See who the nerdiest person is.
I can ask them, knowing their schedules, I don't know that there's going to be somebody who will stand up and say, yeah, I can do it. My question to Courtney and ultimately to you was, would you be willing to accept staff? I've talked with Michael, he'd be interested.
Yep.
So if we can't get a planning commissioner, it's an alternative. Michael would be a really good alternative.
Well, I was Dexter Township representative as staff, too, so.
Okay, so we're going to ask with the planning commission?
I was going to say,
And if it can't be found, then Mike?
or let's have Mike go ahead and be like the alternate. You know?
I move,
Until planning commission can discuss it and see if they want.
Well, there's really no limit on people you can send, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
right, but if there's voting stuff, you only get one.
Yeah, right, that makes sense.
And there are extra chairs.
So I'd say Mike's interested, be fine with them being the alternate.
Second.
Motion by Smith, second by Zach, to have Mike be the alternate. Is that what I heard?
Yep.
Okay, further discussion? Carol, please call the vote.
Knight? Yes. Fisher?
Yes.
Bell?
Yes.
Michelle's?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Keo?
Yes, thank you, motion carries.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. You get the representative increase in pay too.
New business item L6.
I'll make a motion to pay for the expenses incurred by Mr. Michelle's registration hotel to go to the Comp City went to the tune of $751.58.
I'll second.
Motion by Cousins, seconded by Knight.
So I will say, we accidentally deleted a little bit too much. We took, on page 220, we wanted to remove, there was some personal information at the top of what Zach gave us, and we accidentally deleted the conference registration, which was right below the Comfort Inn. So the 751 is correct. If you had the full copy of this with all the information, this conference registration was the second thing on here.
I was going to say, it's a heck of a comfort.
Yeah, we took.
It was not a heck of a company.
Yeah. We took a bunch of the personal information off the top, and I think, yeah, it just shouldn't have gotten taken off.
Actually, the fun thing is their sprinklers had not been inspected since 2016. Little tag in the hallway.
You mean the fire sprinklers?
Yes.
Not the garden sprinklers?
No.
I was figuring the amount was 262.
Yeah, no, it is legitimately the 751 because there's the conference registration that was on that credit card. So
That's what I had in my motion.
yeah.
And I will abstain because it's a financial thing that directly affects me, as opposed to a theoretical thing before money's already spent.
Any discussion by council? Ms. Fisher?
I've already spoken to Zach about this, so he's ready. Hang on to your chair. I'm going to vote no, because for the same reasons that I did the first time. We don't have a policy, we've not come up with one, and it doesn't seem right to me that we send somebody out to someplace and it's a good one or a bad one, and then we pay for this one, we don't pay for that one. So I'm going to vote no. Not because I don't think you did a good job or whatever, but on principle.
Mr. Bell?
I think I'm going to vote yes on this, and my reason is I voted against paying for Zach to go in the first place, but, you know, the horse is out of the barn, and he's brought back information that I think could be of use to us, and so I think that in light of that, I mean, if there was no information brought back, and Zach was just kind of saying, yeah, it was a really great time, then I'd feel differently, but he's taken the time and effort to synthesize the information that he heard. And now tonight mentioned this consultant that we're talking about possibly meeting with. So, you know, in light of that, I think it's a valuable contribution to the process. So, although it may seem like I'm contradicting myself when I voted against paying for him to go, I have my reasons.
Other thoughts? Okay, Ms. Jones, please call the vote with Michelle's abstaining.
Smith?
Yes.
Michelle's is abstaining. Fisher?
No.
Bell?
Yes.
Knight?
Yes.
Cousins?
Yes.
Keo?
No. Motion carries 4-2. Staff can reimburse.
Yeah, we'll just run it through the next.
Okay. Business item L7, consideration of the use of local community stabilization fund. Good, I got this set up. Do you have this ask to pass a motion? Yeah.
I'll make the motion to set aside the general fund portion of the local community stabilization funds for Mill Creek Park Phase 2 and the municipal street fund portion for the pedestrian safety project.
Second by Smith, second by Michelle. Thank you both. Discussion? Courtney, all this, or?
Yeah, so that's what I mentioned earlier, we did get our check. Because those projects are unknowns right now, I just would feel more comfortable directing money towards those, and then if we don't need it, or, you know, something, we can always discuss it, but, with the Mill Creek Park Phase 2, between the bid prices and some of the design changes that had to be made to accommodate the school's request to take the path out to align with the wellness center driveway, and then we have to rebuild the octagon structure at Grand Street to make it so that an ambulance can be on it. And there's just a little bit of cost, so just want to make sure that we're covered for those costs. And since this is one-time money, it's the perfect thing to use a one-time project.
Mr. Bell?
Should we have a motion include the amounts?
Include what?
The what?
Include the amounts.
It can.
Just so. Sure.
Yeah. we can-
Please add the amounts to the motion.
Who's saying that?
Zach.
I was just suggesting.
Smith and Michelle
Yeah,
were
that's
the.
fine.
I was asking if the motion could be modified to include the amounts.
Zach?
I just wanted to clarify that these stabilization funds are the 18-19 calendar or budget year for us. All right.
So they broke the check out differently. They paid everybody out what they were required to pay out in a first check that we got like November when we used to get it. And then they waited until they made sure they didn't have any mistakes and then sent out the final check of the additional funds to everybody, wired it in May. So this is this year's money.
About 18, 19 fiscal year.
Right, this fiscal year.
Seeing no further business. Ms. Jones, please call the vote.
Fisher,
Yes.
Michelle's,
Yes.
Knight,
Yes.
Cousins,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. It's our last new business item for the evening. So we are down to council comments. And Andrew, if you would like to lead us off. Okay. Mr. Bell?
I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Knight?
Nothing, thank you.
Well, Mr. Smith? Ms. Jones?
Just a reminder, it's coming up in a couple weekends away, as Gordon Holidays. There's some more events going on this year. George Bedard will be there on Saturday night, so.
Lovely models at the tea.
Lovely models at the tea, of course.
Great desserts.
Yes.
Oh, we're have to limit your comments. It's starting to get deep in here.
Yes, it does.
Ms. Fisher?
I have a coyote in my neighborhood. Have any of you seen it? At first I thought it was a box, it couldn't be one, but it is a coyote, and when I looked online, it looks exactly like it. I mentioned it to staff, and they'll do whatever it is they need to do with it, but I encourage you to keep your pet in if you're not, I mean, I couldn't believe it, it's not afraid of me at all.
It's the
Watch out.
DNR, it's the DNR.
They're gonna
Deal with that. I don't know, but that's who, local, the Washington County Sheriff doesn't deal with those, it's the
Okay.
DNR.
Well, I now know that what I saw in the winter time was the coyote as
Oh,
well,
okay.
so he's been there a while. But I don't know where he lives, but he's near me.
They're working on it.
He's making his rounds. Friends of Dexter, it's all over Friends of Dexter.
Oh, is that right? Oh, great, well, they can have him back. He's in the alley.
Hopefully it doesn't,
Dexter, have seen him.
hopefully it doesn't run into the bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish he would.
Mr. Cousins?
Well, Mrs. Miller, my neighbor, about 4 years ago, on one of her walks, said that she saw a coyote at about 6:30 in the morning, and was walking up Forest, and I asked her what she'd been drinking all night, and I said, it can't be it. And then she said she saw it 2 days later, and I was sitting in my room at 11, or my front porch at 11:30 in the morning, and this dog is out there, and it's not a dog, it's big, and I was concerned because the neighbor had a cat at the time. And yeah, it was there. It was big. It was pretty scrunchy, but it was a big animal, really big animal.
Well, it was squared up with my cat.
Yeah.
I mean, it was going to take my cat. If I didn't do something about it, it wouldn't go away until I got wind chimes that happened to be there and claimed them. And then it looked away a bit, but then it circled around and came back up this way. So I ended up sitting on the other side of the alley. So it's not afraid of them.
I wish you'd beat the groundhoggers in my neighbor's yard.
Oh, yeah. A long time, he's gone now.
I guess a question, Mr. Murphy gave us a letter that he had written, and it was sent to Mr. Cousins. Was that actually entered into the record? when
Well,
he
everybody
gave-
got one.
I know, but the question wasn't entered into the record of the city as a comment about the fire halls.
Oh, I think I put it with the, I think it came after, I can't remember if I had provided it that way or not, but I mean, we don't really, I mean, I keep them all together, I guess I'm not sure what you mean with the record, because we didn't enter all of them into the minutes that like came from the town hall meeting, but they're all stored together.
I understand that this was different, it was distributed during the public hearing. You got a public session here.
He distributed it early and I put it in all your mailboxes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't got it.
Oh, yeah, it was here because it was
As
in your
long
mailbox.
as, long as the record is with the rest of the comments.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
My copy is.
Zach?
Okay. The last meeting, Mayor Keough asked me to do a list of concerns that were brought up for the fire station at the MAF site. I did not print up a full list. There were 2 design code issues that were identified. The southwest sleeping room had to be reconfigured or moved because it did not have window access. It's required building code to have 2 means of egress. One of them, you have to have a window. The other was that the door swing in the meeting rooms, there's one of the doors that had to be swung the other direction in case there's a fire that had to be egress. There were a lot of value engineering notes, but those were the only 2 code issues that they identified as those. And so I figured I'd save a treating my wife yelling at me for printing a bunch of stuff. That's all I got.
Are you planning to type that up though?
I can, yes.
If you would, please.
You could just send it in an email.
Yeah, well, I'd like to get that along with the other one, just so I can compare the two.
Well, and that's where it's tricky because they didn't really do value engineering of that site, of the
I understand.
current site.
Just whatever the comments are, it'd be nice to have them all.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. I know that stuff takes time. We are back around to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone in the audience? Mr. Murphy's still here. Seeing none, I will seek a motion for adjournment. Motion by Smith. Second by
Cousins.
Cousins. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Have a good evening and a good night, everybody.